Welcome to our channel, Hollywood Movie Review. Dog Day Afternoon, 1975, Movie Review. Dog Day Afternoon is a 1975 American biographical crime drama film directed by Sidney Lumet and produced by Martin Bregman and Martin Elfand. The film stars Al Pacino, John Cazale, James Broderick, and Charles Durning. The screenplay is written by Frank Pearson and is based on the Life magazine article The Boys in the Bank by P. F. Kluge and Thomas More. The feature chronicles the 1972 robbery and hostage situation led by John Wadowitz and Salvatore Natural at a Chase Manhattan branch in Brooklyn. Elfand brought the article to Bregman's attention, who proceeded to negotiate a deal with Warner Brothers Pictures and clear the rights to use the story. Pearson conducted his research and wrote a script that centered on the story of the robbery around Wadowitz. The cast was selected by Lumet and Pacino, with the latter selecting past co-stars from his off-Broadway plays. Filming took place between September and November 1974, and the production was finished 3 weeks ahead of schedule. When theatrically released on September 21, 1975, Dog Day Afternoon was a critical and box office success. The film was nominated for 7 Golden Globe Awards, 6 BAFTAs, winning Best Actor for Pacino and Best Editing, and 6 Academy Awards, winning Best Original Screenplay. In 2009, Dog Day Afternoon was deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress and was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. On August 22, 1972, first-time crook Sonny Wurtzik and his friends Salvatore Sal Natural and Stevie attempt to rob the First Brooklyn Savings Bank. The plan immediately goes awry when Stevie loses his nerve and flees. Sonny discovers they arrived after the daily cash pickup, which left only $1,100 in cash at the bank. Sonny takes the bank's traveler's checks and burns the register in a trash can. When smoke raises suspicion outside, the building is surrounded by police. The two panicked robbers take the bank employees hostage. Police Detective Sergeant Eugene Moretti calls the bank, and Sonny threatens to kill the hostages. Sal assures Sonny he is ready to kill if necessary. Sonny releases an asthmatic security guard as a display of good faith. Moretti convinces Sonny to negotiate outside, and their dialogue culminates in Sonny's shouting Attica to cheers from the crowd. Sonny lists his demands: a vehicle to the airport so they can board a jet, pizzas for the hostages, and to see his wife at the bank. Sonny's lover Leon Shermer reveals the robbery was intended to pay for Leon's gender reassignment surgery and that Sonny has children with estranged wife Angie. The bank's lights shut off when FBI agent Sheldon takes command of the scene. He refuses to discuss additional requests. Sheldon convinces Leon to talk to Sonny on the phone. Leon had been hospitalized at Bellevue Hospital after a suicide attempt. Leon turns down Sonny's offer to join in their escape. Sonny tells the police Leon wasn't involved with the robbery. Sonny agrees to let the bank's director Mulvaney leave due to his diabetic shock, but he refuses to leave his employees. Sonny comes outside to talk to his mother, who fails to persuade him to surrender, then dictates his will to one of the hostages. He arranges for his life insurance to go to Angie and Leon. Agent Murphy drives Sonny, Sal, and the remaining hostages to Kennedy Airport in a limousine. As they wait in the car for their plane to taxi, Sal releases another hostage. Sheldon seizes Sonny's weapon. Murphy shoots Sal in the head with a hidden revolver. Sonny is immediately arrested, and the hostages are freed, while Sal's body is wheeled away. In the aftermath of the film's events, Sonny is sentenced to 20 years in prison, leaving Angie and her children to subsist on welfare. Leon lives as a woman in New York City. On August 22, 1972, John Wadowitz, Salvatore Natural and Robert Westenberg attempted to rob a branch of the Chase Manhattan Bank at 450 Avenue P in Gravesend, Brooklyn. The robbers aimed to take the $150,000 to $200,000, equivalent to $1.5 million in 2025, that they expected to be delivered at 3:30 p.m. that afternoon by an armored truck. According to Wadowitz, a Chase Manhattan executive that he met at a gay bar in Greenwich Village tipped him off. They entered the bank at 3 p.m. to discover that the armored truck had instead taken the money away at 11 a.m. The robbers took the $29,000, equivalent to $223,200 in 2025, that was available at the branch and tried to escape. Westenberg was successful, but Wadowitz and Natural were left behind as the police arrived on the scene. The robbery then turned into a hostage situation. 2 hours into the negotiations, Wadowitz and Natural extended a list of demands to the police: release Elizabeth Eden, Ernest Aaron, from Kings County Hospital Center in exchange for a hostage, bring hamburgers and Coca-Cola, and provide transportation to John F. Kennedy International Airport for them and the hostages. In the words of Wadowitz, "I want them to deliver my wife here from Kings County Hospital. His name is Ernest Aaron. It's a guy. I'm gay." They also requested a plane to fly to a safe location, where the unharmed hostages were to be released. After more than 14 hours of holding the hostages, Natro was killed, and Wadowitz was arrested at Kennedy Airport. Wadowitz told Judge Anthony J. Travia that the motive for the robbery was to pay for a sexual reassignment surgery for Eden. Shortly after a suicide attempt in 1971, Eden expressed to Father Gennaro Oricchio the desire to marry Wadowitz. Oricchio recalled Eden told him, "I'm all mixed up. I want to be a girl. I have to marry the boy I introduced you to. If I don't, I'll be more successful next time." Oricchio, who counseled Eden, agreed to perform a ceremony. He told Eden that he would perform a blessing but that he was unable and unwilling to perform a homosexual marriage. Oricchio was subsequently defrocked. Arthur Bell, an investigative journalist, expressed his belief that the surgery was a peripheral motive for the robbery. Bell met Wadowitz before the hold-up through the Gay Activists Alliance, under the alias of Little John Basso. In his article published by The Village Voice, he laid out Wadowitz's connection to pornographer Mike Umbers and proposed that the heist was organized by the Gambino crime family instead. Life published in its September 22, 1972, issue a chronicle of the robbery. The feature, written by P. F. Kluge and Thomas More, was titled The Boys in the Bank. It detailed the hold-up and the hostages' eventual fraternization with their captors. The authors compared Wadowitz's appearance to that of Dustin Hoffman or Al Pacino. The feature caught the attention of producer Martin Elfand. Elfand took it to Martin Bregman, who piqued the interest of Warner Bros. Pictures executive Richard Shepard. Elfand hired Kluge and More to interview the people involved in the story. Before the script was written, Elfand wanted to ensure that he had signed releases by all the interviewees for the story rights. After the negotiation, each hostage received $600, equivalent to $4,400 in 2025. One hostage asked for more money and was not included in the script. Initially, Westenberg was offered $2,000, but he turned it down following the advice of his lawyer, because he was still serving a 2-year sentence. After his release, he settled for $750. Wadowitz received $7,500, equivalent to $54,400 in 2025, for the rights to the story. From the money, he earmarked $2,500 to Eden's reassignment surgery. News outlets reported that Wadowitz was granted 1% of the film's net profit. Bregman later denied that his company, Artists Entertainment Complex, granted Wadowitz a percentage of the gross. Bregman added he would give him $25,000 if the film performed as well as Serpico, 1973, at the box office. Wadowitz's lawyer Mark Landsman retained $3,500 of the payment he received. Meanwhile, Warner Bros. Paid for Natural's funeral. The working title of the film was The Boys in the Bank. The budget was set at an estimate of $3.8 million, equivalent to $27.56 million in 2025. Frank Pearson was hired to write the screenplay. Aside from Kluge and Moore's research, Pearson conducted his own. He contacted journalist Randy Wicker, who covered the story of the heist for gay publications, and provided technical assistance regarding Manhattan's gay nightclub scene. Pearson decided that he wanted to center the story around Wadowitz, who refused to receive Pearson in prison while he was in a financial dispute with Warner Bros. Pearson analyzed the tapes of the interviews and news articles about the robbery, and approached those involved for additional information. Pearson could not define Wadowitz's character because a different impression was left on each of the interviewees. The project overwhelmed him, but he could not quit because he had spent his cash in advance. Pearson reviewed his material and found that the unfulfilled promises Wadowitz made was the common trait. Pearson viewed them as the story of the bank and the failure of the robbery. Pearson had not completed the script when author Leslie Waller was engaged to write the tie-in novel, thus Waller was given only a screen treatment and partial draft of the script from which to work. In order to give fullest dimension possible to characters and story, Waller did his own research and crafted his own approach as Pearson simultaneously and independently finished the script, which is why the novel and the film are often substantially different from one another. Originally published in hardcover by Delacorte Press and packaged to look like an original novel rather than one extrapolated in part from a screenplay, the book was released almost a year before the film, under the pseudonym Patrick Mann. It was subsequently released in paperback by Dell Publishing just prior to the film's release. With the finished script, Martin Bregman met with director Sidney Lumet and star Al Pacino in London. Pacino, who, at the time, was represented by Bregman, agreed to play the role. Pacino backed out, and Dustin Hoffman expressed interest. Bregman did not meet with Hoffman. He felt that Pacino could bring the sensitivity and vulnerability needed for the role. After more discussion, Pacino accepted the part but rejected it again. Bregman attributed it to Pacino's use of method acting and said that it might have been a world Pacino did not want to explore. Bregman added that no major star had ever played a gay. But he wanted to make the film with Pacino. The actor backed out of the project a third time and told Bregman that he wanted to return to the theater. He said that he would never make the adjustment necessary for the movies. Pacino again returned to the project and attributed his behavior to stress and drinking, and that he needed a life outside work. Lumet mentioned the characterization of Sonny Wurtzich's insane framework of life as the stress factor for Pacino. In a meeting before the rehearsals, Pacino asked Pearson and Lumet to tone down Sonny Wurtzich's behavior. His request was rejected. Eden described Wadowitz as a very domineering person, and added, "He is good-natured, but sometimes went overboard, and he terrified me." Wicker later said that the screenplay of Dog Day Afternoon portrayed Wadowitz to be more rational than he really was. Much of the cast consisted of actors Pacino performed with in off-Broadway plays. Pacino asked Lumet to cast John Cazale as Sal Natural, the only name that did not change for the film. Pacino had worked with Cazale on Israel Horowitz's play The Indian Wants the Bronx, and then in the 1972 film The Godfather. Lumet was not initially convinced he should cast Cazale. He was 39 years old, while Natural was 18 years old at the time of his death, but the director agreed after meeting him. Penelope Allen starred as Sylvia Mouth, based on Shirley Mouthball, and had worked with Pacino before on Scarecrow. For the role of Wurtzich's mother, Pacino asked Lumet to cast Judith Malina, co-founder of the Living Theatre. Lumet wanted to portray the difference between a street police officer and one with an office job. Charles Durning and James Broderick were cast as Moretti and Sheldon respectively, though Lumet initially decided on Durning being the bank manager and Broderick playing Moretti until Pacino intervened. Because Durning was also working on Robert Wise's Two People, Lumet and Wise had to coordinate his schedule, as he flew between California and New York. Lumet did not worry about Broderick's recasting because of his reputation for method acting. Sully Boyer was cast as bank manager Mulvaney, based on Robert Barrett. Chris Sarandon convinced Lumet and Pacino during his reading and was cast as Leon Shermer. Lumet asked him to shift the focus of his characterization to a little less Blanche DuBois, a little more Queen's housewife. There were 3 weeks of rehearsals, and the name of the project was changed to Dog Day Afternoon. Pearson flew from Los Angeles to New York at Lumet's request. Pacino refused to kiss Sarandon in a scene as he thought it was exploitative. He felt that the script kept pushing the gay issue on the audience. He expressed the view that viewers already knew the characters were homosexual and wanted to convey the failure of the relationship instead. Pearson agreed. He realized the couple did not actually kiss and that they had actually carried on a phone conversation. Pearson modified the scene to include the call. The National Gay Task Force approved of the script. Ronald Gold, then director of the organization, welcomed it as sensitive and tasteful. Filming took place between September and November 1974. The opening montage shows New York's traffic, bridges, beaches, and neighborhoods before moving to a view of the Manhattan skyline from a cemetery. Lumet wanted to convey a hot, boring day, a dog day afternoon. The director shot the footage from a station wagon and ended in front of the bank, showing the robbers. The footage was silent, as Lumet decided that he did not want a score for the film. The director felt that he could not reconcile trying to convince an audience that this really happened, with putting a music score into it. Editor Dede Allen played Elton John's composition Amarina in the editing room. Lumet added the song to the film, which comes out of the getaway car's radio. Most of the film took place inside of the bank. Lumet discarded the idea of building a studio set. Instead, the director found a street with a warehouse on the lower floor of a building that used to be an automotive workshop. The crew built a bank set with movable walls, which allowed Lumet to place the cameras as he desired, and to use long lenses to shoot from a distance. The warehouse's location also allowed Lumet to transition freely between the bank and the street, and he avoided changing film locations, and allowed the street to be visible from the inside of the bank. The scenes were shot on Prospect Park West, between 17th and 18th Streets. The bus line that ran through the street was rerouted for filming, and the second story of the building housed the production offices and catering to capture Pacino's movements in a natural fashion, and to allow the actor greater mobility. Lumet integrated the use of roller skates and wheelchairs for the cameramen in the panoramic shots. Lumet would order the camera operators to be pulled as Pacino acted to make the scene look naturalistic, and like it was shot by television cameramen, fighting their way through the crowd. He wanted the production to have the appearance of a newsreel. The film featured close-ups centered on Sonny and the situation in the bank. 2 different cameras were used to cover the negotiations from Durning and Pacino's side. Lumet and cinematographer Victor J. Kemper relied on long shots to depict the point of view of the police, and the robbers' entrapment. Lumet wanted to use the light available on the set to avoid additional luminescence. He fitted the bank with extra fluorescent lamps to achieve desired exposure, and he used other fluorescent lamps of lower power as fill light in close-ups. The film required 7 nights of filming. Lumet needed the neighbors' cooperation for the use of their fire escapes to hold additional lights. The production was challenged by the weather, as temperatures dropped. On the day of the heist in August 1972, the temperature reached 87 degrees Fahrenheit 31 degrees Celsius when the robbers entered the bank. The film was shot during the fall. To avoid having their breath be visible, the cast placed ice in their mouths to even out the temperature. Lighting was provided for the scenes by emergency vehicles that were specially fitted with 4 7,500-watt lamps. The white brick facade of the building provided light reflection. An existing lamp post was used, and its lighting reinforced to keep the crowd visible. Emergency lights were used on set in scenes where the power was shut off by the police. Pacino shot the first scene wearing sunglasses, but he asked the director to reshoot it after watching the dailies, as he felt that Sonny wanted to get caught. He also shaved off a mustache he grew for the role after the replay. Lumet allowed the cast to ad-lib lines with the condition that they did not deviate greatly from the script by Pearson. The production team had recorded improvisations during the rehearsals that were added to the script. Lumet wanted the dialogue to feel natural, and he encouraged the actors to wear their own clothes and to not use makeup. A crowd of 300 to 400 extras was hired. Meanwhile, Lumet asked the neighbors to appear in the film by watching from their windows. The director offered to relocate to a hotel those who did not want to be disturbed by the shooting. The crowd grew as filming progressed, and pedestrians joined the actors. Students from Bishop Ford Central Catholic High School across the Prospect Expressway cut classes to watch the filming. Lumet directed the crowd and whipped them up to a frenzy. By the second week, he felt that the crowd could improvise on its own. To amplify the effect in the film, he utilized handheld cameras. In regards to the project while it was filming, Lumet said, "It's out of my hands. It's got a life of its own." In a scene on the street, before Pacino left the bank, assistant director Bert Harris whispered to him to ask the crowd about Attica. Pacino then improvised the complete dialogue with the crowd. Lumet decided to shoot the phone conversations Sonny had with his wife and Leon back-to-back. As Pacino acted the scene, he increased the intensity of the portrayal. While both conversations lasted a total of 14 minutes, Lumet's camera could only shoot 10 at a time, and he had to bring a second camera. For the scene, Lumet separated Pacino from the rest of the bank with a black velvet mask to isolate him. He left a hole for both cameras, and for himself to look in. Lumet wanted a second take. An exhausted Pacino accepted, and he kept the same intensity. At the end of the scene, Lumet and Pacino cried. The director later remembered it as an amazing moment, as good a moment of directing as I've ever had in my life. The call between Pacino and Sarandon was improvised. Lumet felt that Sarandon had great taste, and that the actor would not resort to homosexual cliches. He deemed the humor of his improvisation as genuinely funny, and that it was not laughing at a gay character. Sarandon felt that the conversation was welcomed by the audiences because it wasn't about a drag queen and his boyfriend, and that it reflected two people that were trying to come to grips with what is wrong in their relationship. The film was characterized by its light comic touch, and according to critic David Thompson, for its ear and instinct for comedy. In Pearson's script, Wurtzik's question regarding which country Sal wanted to escape to did not have a scripted response, but Cazale improvised by answering Wyoming. Lumet had to cover his mouth, as he nearly interrupted the scene by laughing. The start of the final scene at the bank was shot on a 40 degrees Fahrenheit 4 degrees Celsius night with wind. Pacino was sprinkled with water to simulate sweat. Lumet mixed the artificial sweat himself, as he felt that the makeup crews often used it in excess, or that it was insufficient. The director used a mixture of glycerin and water that he learned to make during the shooting of 12 Angry Men. The mixture lasted longer and allowed him better continuity throughout the scenes. Harris directed the scene of the caravan that headed to Kennedy Airport from a helicopter. A plane and squad cars on the tarmac were used. Senator Jacob Javits, an acquaintance of Lumet, facilitated the negotiations with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. The production team was given 1 day to shoot in an area of the airport that was not a terminal. The international flights that headed to the main runway had to go around the shooting location. Lumet directed the scene at the airport from the ground. He chose to cut from the close-up after Sal was shot and a gun was held to Sonny's head, to a long shot. The view presented a panorama of the scene at the airport. Lumet centered on Pacino and ordered the crew to roll Cazale on a stretcher to be visible by the actor. Pacino used the image to improvise his reaction. The shooting was completed 3 weeks ahead of schedule. After editing the film, Lumet and Allen felt that the slow-paced scene of Sonny dictating his will/testament conflicted with the rest of the fast-moving sequences, so they decided to restore 6 to 7 minutes of discarded footage to balance the tempo of the film. Lumet stated the scene of the last will was the reason for his decision to work on the film. He considered it moving, but worried about the audience laughing at it. His worries were based on what he considered the defensive attitude on sexual subjects. To avoid it, he focused on portraying emotional performances by the actors throughout the film. Lumet had access to the footage of Wadowitz and Ethan's ceremony, originally broadcast by Channel 5 at the time of the robbery, which featured Wadowitz in his army uniform presenting a wedding ring with a flash cube to Eden, who wore a wedding dress. Wadowitz's mother and 8 male bridesmaids were present. Lumet planned to use it in the film. The scene would have featured the footage broadcast on a television in the bank, but he decided not to include it, as he felt it would be unrecoverable and that the audiences would not take the rest of the movie seriously. Dog Day Afternoon opened on September 20, 1975, at the San Sebastian International Film Festival. The film premiered in New York City on September 21, 1975, and released nationwide in October. It grossed between $50 million, equivalent to $299.17 million in 2025, and $56 million, equivalent to $335.06 million in 2025. The New York Times delivered a favorable review. It called the film a gaudy street carnival and Lumet's most accurate, most flamboyant depiction of New York. The reviewer remarked the brilliant characterizations of the cast, Pacino's display of a bravura style, Sarandon's performance of fear, dignity and silliness, and the acting that one remembers from the supporting cast. New York Daily News gave Dog Day Afternoon 4 stars. It described the film as a gut-level human comedy and called Pacino stunning, brilliantly erratic and terribly touching. The publication felt that Pacino portrayed a rich, volatile character. It favored Durning and Sarandon, and called the female cast marvelous. The record welcomed the performances as very natural. It determined that all the slickness was on Pearson's script, and it attributed it to its closeness to the real events portrayed on the film. For The Village Voice, critic Andrew Sarris opined that Pacino acted assiduously with the whites of his eyes. Sarris also noted that pain pouring out of Pacino's eyes as he deemed Sonny a Freudian tragic hero, and that the combination with Cazale's character's deadpan death wish produced much emotional debris. The piece declared the high point of the film to be the phone conversation between Pacino and Sarandon. Sarris pointed that the dialogue featured 2 wounded creatures capable of an extraordinary emotional audacity, and concluded that the film was to be seen, but not swallowed whole, and making heroes out of felons was a short step to utter chaos. Film critic Roger Ebert rated it with 3.5 stars out of 4, welcoming its irreverent, quirky sense of humor. Gary Arnold of The Washington Post called it a triumphant new classic of American movie naturalism. Penelope Gilead of The New Yorker wrote, though the farcical tone of the movie is blusterous, falling into the common showbiz habit of supplying energy in place of intent, the movie succeeds, on the whole, because it has the crucial farcical value of not faltering. Gene Siskel gave Dog Day Afternoon 4 stars on his review for the Chicago Tribune, and rated the film as superb, noting the scenes mixing the fear of violence with insane laughter. He felt that Pacino, Cazale, and Durning kept the film from degenerating into silliness. Siskel talked about Pacino's display of so much energy that made him believe the unbelievable and Cazale's haunting, sallow-cheeked silence. Lumet and Allen were praised for the terrific, roller coaster pace of the film. United Press International defined it as an exceptionally fine film, outrageously funny and deeply moving, and welcomed Pacino's acting as a dazzling display. The supporting roles by Cazale, Durning, Allen, and Broderick were deemed excellent, while Parrott's and Sarandon's performances were singled out. For Joe Baltake, Pacino's appearance was a raw, high-voltage, uproariously funny performance. His review on the Philadelphia Daily News continued by calling the film supercharged and multi-leveled by a slapstick comedy, tense drama, caper tale, biographical material, and character study. Baltake compared Cazale's appearance on the film to that of a coonskin character by Ralph Bakshi. In regards to the rest of the cast, he determined everyone good. He praised Kemper's cinematography as You Are There and Allen's razor-sharp editing. The Boston Globe praised Lumet's wonderful direction of in-depth, psychological probing. Critic Kevin Kelly hailed the editing by Allen as brilliant, and defined Pacino's performance as virtuose and Cazale's as shyly and sorrowfully eloquent. The review also favored the fine performances by the supporting cast. The Evening Sun applauded the humor in the movie. Critic Lou Cedron felt that it was natural and true. He stressed that Pearson's script, combined with the work of Pacino and Lumet, made the drama never uncomfortable. The Detroit Free Press expressed that the picture relied on Pacino's tender, forthright, generous and affecting and extreme performance. The Miami Herald praised Dog Day Afternoon as a movie of fascinating realism. Critic John Huddy expressed that the street scenes were magnificently staged, and that Lumet finds order in chaos, sense and insanity. The Atlanta Constitution applauded Durning as absolutely real, and the reviewer opined that the cast was consistently fine. It concluded by mentioning the excellent script and editing, and defined the film as funny and poignant. The Montreal Gazette mentioned the variety of characters presented in the film. The reviewer concluded that it was a monument to the thought and care by the production team. Pacino's remarkable performance and Pearson's all-inclusive script were noted. The Guardian opined that Dog Day Afternoon presented Lumet's best film for some considerable time, and deemed Pacino's acting as brilliant and Cazale's as well observed. The Sydney Morning Herald considered it beautifully directed by Lumet, and another mature American picture which faces and mirrors reality. Wadowitz's wife, Carmen, received $50, equivalent to $400 in 2025, from Artists Entertainment Complex for her contribution to the story. She signed the documents to Wicker, who recorded and exchanged a tape with her account on behalf of the company. The depiction of her character, Angie, in the film affected her, as she felt she was deemed repulsive. The novelization of Dog Day Afternoon described her as a fat cunt, no good pussbag and a guinea broad, among other pejorative terms. In the film, Angie laments her weight gain as the reason for Sonny's distance. Wadowitz was also angered by her depiction in the film, and defined his then-wife as a sweet kid. Pearson declared that the character was presented farthest from the truth, and that he could not stand how cast the role, or how Parrots portrayed her. He further stressed his disappointment at the publicity campaign that presented the film as a true story, and remarked its differences with the Life article. Pearson presented a complaint to the Writers Guild of America. Kluge, a co-author of the Life feature, believed the filmmakers stayed with the surface of a lively journalistic story and that the film had a strong, fast-paced story without reflection or a contemplative view of life. Carmen took legal action against Warner Brothers. On behalf of her and her daughters Carmen and Dawn, Wadowitz filed a lawsuit alleging invasion of privacy and requesting $12 million in damages. the appellate division of the New York Supreme Court ruled in favor of Warner Brothers, as the court determined that the true names or pictures of the family and robbers were not used in the film or the book. Wadowitz then sued the studio for 1% of the earnings he claimed were included in the deal for the use of his story. He received $40,000, equivalent to $212,500 in 2025, after lawyers' fees were deducted. The New York Supreme Court ordered that $100, equivalent to $400 in 2025, were to be given weekly to Carmen Wadowitz, plus $50 weekly for both children. The rest of the money was placed in escrow of the New York State Crime Victims Compensation Board to pay for the claims of the victims of the 1972 robbery. Dog Day Afternoon was nominated for 6 Academy Awards. Pearson received the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. The film was nominated for 7 Golden Globes but won none. It received 6 British Academy Film Awards nominations. Pacino was nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role and Allen won the Best Editing. Pearson also received the Writers Guild of America Award for Best Written Drama, and Durning the National Board of Review Award for Best Supporting Actor. At the San Sebastian International Film Festival, Pacino won Best Actor, while the movie was nominated for Best Film. The film ranked at number 70 on AFI's 100 Years 100 Thrills list. Meanwhile, The Line Attica, placed at number 86 on 100 Years. 100 Movie Quotes. It was nominated for 100 Years. 100 Movies in 1998 and 2007. In 2006, Premiere issued its 100 Greatest Performances of All Time. The magazine placed Pacino's performance as Sonny as the 4th greatest ever. In the same year, Writers Guild of America West ranked its screenplay 69th in WGA's list of 101 Greatest Screenplays. In 2012, the Motion Picture Editors Guild listed Dog Day Afternoon as the 20th best edited film of all time based on a survey of its membership. Analysis in the 21st century of Dog Day Afternoon has interpreted it as an anti-authoritarian film that defied the establishment, particularly with the emphasis on the Attica prison riot and the character's resentment toward the police. Commentators also mentioned its contemporaneity with the aftermath of the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal. It became one of the first motion pictures to portray a bisexual male character as the protagonist. In 2009, Dog Day Afternoon was deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress, and it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. On November 11, 1979, a censored and shortened version was broadcast on NBC's Sunday Night Big Event, which marked the film's television premiere. It was released on VHS in 1985. In 2006, Warner Home Video released Dog Day Afternoon on a double-disc DVD. For the film's 40th anniversary, a 2-disc Blu-ray was released in 2015. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 86 out of 100, based on 15 critics, indicating universal acclaim. Meanwhile, on the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 94% of 125 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 8.6/10. The website's consensus reads, Dog Day Afternoon offers a finely detailed snapshot of people in crisis with tension-soaked drama shaded in black humor. AllMovie gave the movie 5 stars out of 5. The review defined it as a quintessential 1970s story and focused on the film's contemporary tensions over law, media, and sexuality. Christopher Null wrote in 2006 that the film captures perfectly the zeitgeist of the early 1970s, a time when optimism was scraping rock bottom and John Wadowitz was as good a hero as we could come up with. During the 2011 San Francisco International Film Festival, the film was included as a tribute to Pearson for his recent death. The San Francisco Chronicle reflected on the time of its release, and the reviewer felt that it seemed as if the great movies would never stop, when the extraordinary creative burst we'd been seeing in the 1970s looked as though it might go on forever. The AV Club called it a frank social melodrama that's also a celebration of quotidian bravery, while it praised the cinematography by Kemper that captures the joy as well as the decay of a crowded city. IGN delivered a good review, and considered Pacino's performance to be spectacular, and achieves a kind of nuance and complexity that few actors from his or any other generation have before or since achieved. Meanwhile, the reviewer considered that the movie displayed the reason Cazale was one of the great character actors of all time. The 1977 Italian film Operazione Kappa, Spara da Vista was loosely based on Dog Day Afternoon. The 1987 Hong Kong film People's Hero was a remake of the film. For his audition on The Simpsons, actor Hank Azaria used an imitation voice based on Pacino's Dog Day Afternoon character. It was the basis for the final voice of Mose Eislak. A bank robbery featuring Sonny and Sal was featured on The Simpsons episode I Don't Want to Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. In 2006, Marcia Jean Kurtz and Lionel Pena reprised their Dog Day Afternoon roles as Miriam Douglas and a pizza delivery man in the heist thriller film Inside Man. The names of several television series episodes reference the film, including All in the Family, Welcome Back, Cotter, Alice, Saint Elsewhere, Sledgehammer, Hill Street Blues, Perfect Strangers, The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, The New Lassie, Kenan and Kel, King of the Hill, Bob's Burgers, Supernatural, and Two Broke Girls. The Shout Attica. Attica was also reproduced in multiple films and television series. A stage adaptation of the movie is set to premiere on Broadway in the spring of 2026, written by Stephen Adly Guirgis. Rupert Gould is set to direct with John Bernthal and Eben Moss-Bachrach starring as Sonny and Sal, respectively. In October 2025, it was announced the show would premiere on March 10, 2026 at the August Wilson Theatre and run through June 28. Bank robbery. Doesn't matter what cause you are doing it for, it's always a bad idea. No matter how desperately a person might need the money, he or she should not attempt to rob a bank. Ever. It's a bad idea that has so much more risk than reward. Disclaimer, I know this thing is based on a true story, but I will not base my review on how perfectly accurate to the real situation it may or may not be, but I will instead judge it as a movie, which it is. Disclaimer over. Sonny, Al Pacino, and Sal, John Cazale, R.I.P., and two men who walk into a bank during a hot summer afternoon to rob it. And what was supposed to be a simple bank robbery soon turns into a tense and complicated hostage situation. The plot in Dog Day Afternoon is pretty great, not just because of my love for heist films, but because it doesn't just present it in the typical black and white cops versus robbers way. The situation and the motivations behind it are much more gray than in other movies, and that's what I loved about the plot. You see every little angle of it. It's rare to see such a nuanced plot in bank robbery/heist movies that I found it quite refreshing. The plot is really a tense drama that managed to hold my interest from start to finish. The characters, like the plot, are very layered and have plenty of nuance to them, which makes them really interesting to watch. Al Pacino is fantastic as Sonny. And what I really like about his character is that he isn't your typical asshole bank robber, he's just a man who does this for good reasons. By good reasons I don't mean that bank robbery is okay, read the intro again, but that his motivations isn't just to get rich, but he has a clear motivation that I can understand/get behind. John Cazale is great as Sal, the man that is helping Pacino rob the bank. We also get James Broderick, R.I.P., as an FBI agent that is there to negotiate with Pacino/Cazale, and he's great. We have Charles Durning, R.I.P., as a cop that tries to negotiate with Pacino/Cazale, and he's great. We get Chris Sarandon as someone that is close to Pacino's character, and he's great. We even get a brief, but still welcome, appearance from Lance Henriksen, who plays Anater FBI agent, and he is really good here. The entire cast is great in this movie, and all the characters are great. What is interesting about the music in this movie is that there is none. Okay, I kind of lied there is a song at the beginning of the movie to sort of establish the city and such. But other than that there is nothing. No score, no other licensed tracks, jack fucking shit. And while I do love me some good music in a movie, I think that the lack of it here actually kind of works to its advantage. I try to imagine the scenes in my head with music, and I can't, does not compute. This movie has no music in it, and I really liked that about it. This movie was directed by Sidney Lumet, R.I.P., and I think he did a pretty damn great job. The framing is great and his direction here is very tense and engaging. I felt like I was stuck in this shitshow with the characters, and that is proof of great directing. What makes that even more interesting is that there is barely any violence in the movie. As a matter of fact, there is almost no violence in it at all. Kind of refreshing to see that in a crime movie for once. This movie has been very well received. On Rotten Tomatoes it has a 95% positive rating and a fresh certification. On Metacritic it doesn't even exist. How dareth thou, Metacritic? Roger Ebert gave it 4 out of 4 stars and put it on his great movies list. And on IMDb.com it has a score of 8.0 out of 10 and is ranked number 243 on the top 250 list. The movie also won 1 Oscar in the category of Best Original Screenplay. It also got an additional 5 nominations in the categories of Best Picture, Best Actor, Pacino, Best Supporting Actor, Sarandon, Best Director, and Best Film Editing. There's a point midway in Dog Day Afternoon when a bank's head teller, held hostage by 2 very nervous stick-up men, is out in the street with a chance to escape. The cops tell her to run. But, no, she goes back inside the bank with the other tellers, proudly explaining, "My place is with my girls." What she means is that her place is at the center of live TV coverage inspired by the robbery. She's enjoying it. Criminals become celebrities because their crimes provide fodder for the media. Many of the fashionable new crimes, hijacking, taking hostages, are committed primarily as publicity stunts. And a complex relationship grows up among the criminals, their victims, the police, and the press. Knowing they're on TV, hostages comb their hair and killers say the things they've learned on the evening news. That's the subject, in a way, of Sidney Lumet's pointed film. It's based on an actual bank robbery that took place in New York in the 1970s. And it seems to borrow, too, from that curious episode in Stockholm when hostages, barricaded in a bank vault with would-be robbers, began to identify with their captors. The presence of reporters and live TV cameras changed the nature of those events, helped to dictate them, made them into happenings with their own internal logic. But Lumet's film is also a study of a fascinating character, Sonny, the bank robber who takes charge, played by Al Pacino as a compulsive and most complex man. He's street smart, he fought in Vietnam, he's running the stick-up in order to get money for his homosexual lover to have a sex-change operation. He's also married to a chubby and shrill woman with 3 kids, and he has a terrifically possessive mother. The Freudianism gets a little thick at times. Sonny isn't explained or analyzed, just presented. He becomes one of the most interesting modern movie characters, ranking with Gene Hackman's Eavesdropper in The Conversation and Jack Nicholson's Bobby Dupuy in 5 Easy Pieces. Sonny and his zombie-like partner, Sal, hit the bank at closing time. A third Confederate gets cold feet and leaves early. The stick-up is discovered, the bank is surrounded, the live TV minicams line up across the street, and Sonny is in the position, inadvertently, of having taken hostages. Sal, John Cazale, is very willing to shoot them, a factor in all that follows. There are moments when Dog Day Afternoon comes dangerously close to the cliches of old Pat O'Brien gangster movies and the great Lenny Bruce routine inspired by them. The Irish cop shouts into his bullhorn, "Come on out, Sonny, and nobody's gonna get hurt," and Sonny's mother pleads with him from the middle of the street. But Lumet is exploring the cliches, not just using them. And he has a good feel for the big city crowd that's quickly drawn to the action. At first, Sonny is their hero, and he does a defiant dance in front of the bank, looking like a rock star playing to his fans. When it becomes known that Sonny's bisexual, the crowd turns against him. But within a short time, New York being New York, gay Libyers turn up to cheer him on. The movie has an irreverent, quirky sense of humor, and we get some notion of the times we live in when the bank starts getting obscene phone calls, and the giggling tellers breathe heavily into the receiver. There's also, in a film that's probably about 15 minutes too long, an attempt to take a documentary look at the ways police and banks try to handle situations like this. And through it all there's that tantalizing attraction of instant celebrityhood, caught for an instant when a pizza deliveryman waves at the cameras and shouts, "Hey, I'm a star." Sidney Lumet's Dog Day Afternoon was a hole in my classic cinema watch list. I know and love the director, especially due to their 1976 masterpiece Network and 1982's The Verdict. I am also a big fan of heist films. A few months ago I watched Lumet's The Anderson Tapes from 1971, so following up with the grittier Dog Day Afternoon seemed like the logical next view. I was immediately surprised by the realism and grit in Dog Day Afternoon. Whereas The Anderson Tapes stars a charismatic lead criminal, Sean Connery pulling from the suave and slick bag of his famous role as James Bond, the young Al Pacino we get in Dog Day Afternoon is the complete opposite. The film starts with three bumbling bank robbers immediately fumbling a bank heist. One of the robbers gets cold feet right at the start and abandons the crew. The leader of the crew, Sonny Wurtzig, played by Al Pacino, is visibly thrown off by the betrayal. The character never gets his footing back, if he ever had it. Rather than slick criminals pulling off a well-planned heist, we are treated to idiots making things up as they go along. Apparently this film was received as a comedy when it was first screened in 1975. I did not find this out until after watching the film. I read it as a realistic heist film based on a true story. After hearing that it was received as a comedy, I could imagine laughing with the audience at the failures of Pacino's lead. But watching it alone on the Criterion Channel was a sober and grim experience. I found the ending especially chilling, which I don't know if I would have felt that level of chill if I had seen this in a theater with an audience. It is interesting how set and setting can change the way we receive film. I also did not know ahead of viewing that the film dealt with issues of queer identity. I knew nothing about the real-life story the film is based on. I went in cold. I was shocked at the level of maturity with which the film deals with Sonny's sexuality and the portrayal of his trans wife. Yeah, we're jumping a bit ahead again, thanks to a special screening in the series that also brought me to Diner. This time it was the Academy Screenwriters Block that picked the film, and I can see why. This was a really fun story, one based on a real event, an attempted bank robbery at a Brooklyn bank in 1972. But screenwriter Frank Pearson made some very smart moves in telling the tale. On a summer afternoon, Sonny Wurtzig, Al Pacino, and two accomplices plan to rob a bank branch. Sonny has some bank experience, and has timed things for just after the bank closes but before the daily cash pickup. However, things quickly go wrong. First, one of the accomplices gets cold feet and drops out, leaving only twitchy Sal, John Cazale, to assist. Sonny and Sal also discover that the bank they picked has its cash pickup before closing, so there's only $1,000 in the safe. And when a frustrated Sonny burns the traveler's check register, a bystander spots the smoke and calls police, forcing Sonny and Sal into seizing the tellers and bank manager as hostages so they can negotiate with NYPD Sergeant Eugene Moretti, Charles Durning, for their own freedom. It sounds like a tense, serious situation. But Pearson finds moments for humor. Sonny is a quick-thinking fast talker, and gets some really good zingers in against the police, and later the FBI when they get in on the act. The bank tellers are also not cowering in fear. Some of them start to bond with Sal and Sonny during their captivity, sassing them back now and then. Sal is billed as a cold-blooded killer at first, but may not be quite so quick on the mental draw. When there's a chance for them to flee the United States, Sonny asks him what country they should go to, and Sal reverently chooses Wyoming. Even the extras get in on the act. When a pizza delivery man arrives with some pies for the hostages, after he drops things off with the police, he turns to the bank of news cameras and starts mugging, shouting, "Look, I'm a TV star." This isn't just funny, though, it is weirdly progressive, especially today. About midway through the film we learn the whole reason Sonny is robbing the bank. He is in love with someone who just came out as a trans woman, and needs the money for her transition surgery. The crowd outside the bank does turn on Sonny a bit when they learn this, and Sal is miffed that the news media assumed he's also gay. But when Sonny gets a phone call from Leon, Chris Sarandon, it's handled really well. Leon, still using her dead name, isn't a stereotype. They're clearly a person still sorting out some big complicated things, and Sonny is clearly someone who loves them and really just wanted to help somehow. Some movies are both of their time and timeless. Director Sidney Lumet's Dog Day Afternoon is a perfect example. It's set on a sweltering day in early 1970s Brooklyn, a rougher, dirtier, more chaotic place than today. But this story of a bank robbery gone wrong feels as alive and immediate as anything released this year. It's a movie with a documentary's realism about a nobody pushed to commit a crime to pay for the person he loves to get surgery. Dog Day Afternoon is also a trailblazing queer story for the Hollywood of the time. It's also Al Pacino's best movie, a striking demonstration of the man's many talents. He's raw and feral, explosive and lovable. I can't think of another role where he's both heartbreaking and genuinely funny. John Cazale, who played Fredo to Pacino's Michael in The Godfather, is quietly heartbreaking here as a sweetheart with a submachine gun. There are movies that are odd, and Dog Day Afternoon certainly qualifies as one. It isn't just an odd film because of its subject matter and characters, it's odd in its presentation. I feel safe in saying that what you see with Dog Day Afternoon is all you get. This isn't a film that strives for any deeper meaning. If it presents an idea or a theme, it clearly states said theme and then quickly moves on. Not only does all of this add up to an odd movie, but it equals a movie that is hard to get into. I will say that there are some genuinely funny moments in Dog Day Afternoon. There aren't many poignant or dramatic moments, because the characters failed to connect with me on any sort of dramatic level. However, there were moments of comedy and moments that weren't supposed to be funny that ended up funny. The film also moved along at a nice clip. This greatly helped to immerse me in the proceedings. As I said, I didn't feel any connection to the characters or events, but the brisk pace of the narrative meant that at the very least I was engaged at all times. Al Pacino is very good in Dog Day Afternoon, and I'm sure that sounds odd after I just lamented over the film's inability to connect with me. It is true that I didn't feel any sort of connection with Pacino, but I did recognize the little touches he was adding to Sonny that made him more affecting than he had any right to be. It wasn't a great performance, but it was enough to keep me interested in what Pacino was going to do next. The main problem in Dog Day Afternoon is that the story never goes anywhere and the narrative is very stagnant. I kept on expecting for anything to happen in the story, but outside of an anticlimactic resolution the story stayed put. If a story is resigned to staying in one place, then there needs to be some sort of deeper meaning to the picture. But, as I already said, Dog Day Afternoon lacks any deeper meaning. It touches on the ideas of homosexuality, conformity and economics, but it never goes beyond a passing glimpse of these subjects. Dog Day Afternoon is a peculiar movie, and based on the strength of Pacino's performance plus the brisk nature of the film, I would recommend it. However, it's not a movie that will get you thinking or one that will leave you contemplating life. Dog Day Afternoon is a sometimes funny picture that never really gets going. It's just like being stuck in a bank vault during a robbery. In Dog Day Afternoon, Sidney Lumet sought what he called naturalism. He directs the real-life story of a disastrous bank robbery committed by two disenfranchised outcasts with a constructed authenticity. Of course, the usual stock characters make appearances: two hold-up men, a few hostages, a small army of cops, a police negotiator, and a crowd of onlookers. But among the countless films adhering to this formulaic scenario, Lumet's treatment renders the chaotic ordeal with psychological depth, stylistic realism, and a tone that might be comic if not for the tragic conclusion. Working from an Oscar-winning screenplay that mostly adheres to the facts, Lumet's desire for verisimilitude led him to adopt a documentary-like aesthetic and work with his performers to consider the inner lives of their characters. Together, these tactics would lend the story veracity and genuine humanity, which proved all the more groundbreaking because its central character, played by Al Pacino, was the first openly bisexual character to appear in a Hollywood film. What is more, the character appears not as a degrading Hollywood stereotype but as an everyday person with wants and desires. In 1975, such a conceit was not only unconventional but unprecedented. Only Lumet, with his application of formal techniques and close collaboration with empathetic actors, could have turned this potentially sensationalistic or exploitative story into a melodrama about relatable characters. In doing so, he naturalizes an otherwise marginalized queer character for the first time in Hollywood history. The opening titles read, "What you are about to see is true. It happened in Brooklyn, New York, on August 22, 1972. The real story involved Vietnam veteran John Sonny Wadowitz and his accomplice Salvatore Sal Natural, who entered a Brooklyn branch of the Chase Manhattan Bank intending to rob the place. Sonny, a former bank teller, had inside information that this particular branch would have upwards of $200,000 in its vault that day. However, when he and Sal arrived, an armored pickup had already moved the hefty sum and gone, leaving the vault with only $29,000. What unfolded was a 15-hour holdup with 8 hostages kept at gunpoint. Over 100 police officers gathered at the scene. A crowd of thousands also formed to watch the spectacle unfold. Inside, Sonny talked to reporters over the phone and fueled the media attention. The robbers made demands and ordered pizzas delivered by the FBI. The night-long ordeal ended early the next morning when federal agents escorted the 2 men, the bank manager, and the remaining bank employees to Kennedy Airport for a getaway by plane. On an isolated runway, an FBI agent shot Sal dead. Sunny immediately surrendered. Eventually, media reports revealed that Sunny hoped the robbery would provide enough money to finance a male-to-female sex reassignment surgery for his partner, whom he had married the year before. The situation might have been less sensational if not for Sunny's status as a bisexual man, then considered a sexual nonconformity and usually kept outside public view. Although the gay rights movement in the U.S. had quietly gained traction for years, the police raid of the Stonewall Inn, a gay bar in Greenwich Village, in June 1969, prompted a riot involving over 400 protesters. Stonewall marked a defiant pronouncement of gay rights and would be commemorated yearly in June with gay pride celebrations. Even so, LGBTQ+ persons were still denied rights and treated with an otherness, contributing to the media circus around Sunny and Sal's bank robbery that dominated television and radio broadcasts. It certainly caught the attention of producers Martin Bregman and Martin Elfand, who planned to develop P. F. Kluge and Thomas More's Life magazine article, The Boys in the Bank, the film's original title, into a juicy exploitation movie. But rather than turn the story into a so-called freak show, Lumet sought to humanize Sunny and Sal, thereby normalizing queer identities. In his 1995 bookmaking movies, Lumet described the theme of Dog Day Afternoon: freaks are not the freaks we think they are. We are much more connected to the outrageous behavior than we know or admit. His view of the picture represented a shift from the exploitative intentions of B-movies to a focus on elevating the story to high drama, making it universally human. Lumet came from Polish Jewish immigrants who lived in Manhattan's Lower East Side neighborhood and performed in the Yiddish theater. There, he got his start as an actor at age 5. As a young man who appeared in Broadway productions and evolved into an acting instructor, he worked alongside Elia Kazan, Lee Strasberg, and Cheryl Crawford to develop what would become the Actors Studio. After serving in World War II, he returned and realized he would never have a career as a performer. His place was directing, first stage plays, then, eventually, in the experimental golden age of live television. Working for CBS in their New York studio during television's infancy, he shot hundreds of episodes of shows such as the adventure anthology Danger, 1950-55, and the historical reenactment program You Are There, 1953-57, often experimenting with the medium and introducing new technical tricks that crackled with visual bravado. His aesthetic often hewed toward realism, albeit with subtle visual stylizations that sometimes go unnoticed by critics. Lumet also excelled as a director because of his knack for schematic thinking, a requirement for shooting sometimes live productions for TV. His ability to map out an entire shoot and execute it according to that plan made his transition into cinema a natural one. Though he remained a Hollywood outsider, mainly because he was committed to shooting in New York. Still, the studios liked Lumet because he delivered finished products on time and often on or under budget. Part of Lumet's efficiency as a filmmaker stems from his frequent label as an actor's director. His process in close work with performers, detailed in making movies, spans his 50-year career, ranging from his superb debut, 12 Angry Men, 1957, to his excellent final film, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, 2007. Lumet used the same pre-production process throughout his entire career, starting with anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks of rehearsals with actors to find their characters, revise the script if necessary, block scenes, and generally create a roadmap of the film before cameras began to roll. These weeks allowed the actors to understand their characters and hone their performances. It also made the shoot a matter of capturing what had already been prepared and agreed upon in rehearsals. During this time, Lumet often directed his actors to work from the inside out. Although he collaborated with performers who used techniques including method acting, classical training from the British stage, and a self-taught approach, he encouraged them to find a character's inner life and understand them as human beings. Such rigorous pre-planning made Lumet famous for rarely shooting more than a few takes, allowing his productions to move fast and on schedule. Lumet was also a believer in the philosophy that form should follow function, or that a film's theme should inform its style. This is never more evident than in Dog Day Afternoon, where Lumet sought to underscore the reality of what took place on that hot day in 1972 with what he described as close to documentary filmmaking as one can get in a scripted movie. He wanted to make sure that you never felt it was a movie, that you felt in essence you were watching a newsreel. So Lumet and cinematographer Victor J. Kemper went out into the streets of New York, guerrilla style, and captured shots of everyday life in sweltering temperatures. They appear in the film's opening montage: a dog rummaging through garbage, people sitting outside and talking, a public pool, a construction site, heavy traffic, a busy beach, homeless people, businessmen, and other scenes. Then Sonny, Al Pacino, Sal, John Cazale, and Stevie, Gary Springer, appear in a car in front of a bank, looking no different than the everyday people of New York. They step out, one by one, and enter the bank near closing time. To further the natural look, Lumet insisted his cast to use their personal clothes and do their own makeup for the production, removing any Hollywood gloss. Lumet and Kemper also used no artificial light sources, relying on the bank's fluorescent bulbs and emergency lights for the interiors. At night, the light source came from the police spotlights and street lamps outside. Almost immediately in the film, things go wrong. Dog Day Afternoon isn't a slick heist film where the robbers have spent weeks poring over bank blueprints and refining every detail of their score. Instead, Stevie tells Sonny that he's getting really bad vibes. When Sonny pulls out his shotgun from a flower box, it gets caught in the ribbon, and he struggles with it for a moment. Details like this suggest Lumet's slice-of-life approach to the melodramatic material, introducing everyday slip-ups and comic foibles into a high-stakes scenario to heighten the sense of naturalism. Just as Sonny's "this is a robbery" routine begins, Stevie says he wants out. Sonny tells him not to take the getaway car, and Stevie whines about how he'll get home. It's a hilarious moment, and the audience feels Sonny's tension. Now Sonny's momentum has been thrown off, and the pressure visibly strains him. Worse, Sonny and Sal quickly learn the vault is nearly empty. Its contents have been picked up already, leaving only $1,100 in the vault, dramatically less than the actual robbery. The situation has descended into a comedy of errors. And after they've collected their loot and there's about a minute before Sonny and Sal can make their escape, Detective Moretti, Charles Durning, calls from across the street. He will stumble through negotiations. Outside, police officers gather, and so does a massive crowd of spectators and news crews. Snipers take their positions. Police and media helicopters circle overhead. Sonny threatens violence and makes demands. The police bring Sonny's wife, Leon, Chris Sarandon, fresh from Bellevue Hospital after an attempted suicide, to talk. Before long, the FBI arrives and takes over, pretending to give Sonny and Sal their demands: a plane to anywhere. But the film ends just like the real-life story, with Sal dead and Sonny arrested. Lumet calibrated his entire production to give the audience a really their sense of space and time. Note that the screenplay contains no flashbacks. The story's immediacy stems from the film's immersion in the here and now. This applies to aspects of the technical production as well. Shooting inside an actual bank would have limited the camera's movements, but building a bank set in a studio would have looked stagey. So instead, Lumet resolved to rent a warehouse and construct a bank set with removable walls, large enough to accommodate the camera for interiors and exteriors, rendering a convincing on-location set. But there are hints of subtle stylization as well. Lumet and the set decorator assembled a claustrophobic bank interior composed of flat surfaces in gray and beige, sparsely decorated. As a result, the surfaces disappear into the backdrop, a tactic that heightens Sonny and Sal's sense of feeling trapped in an unadorned and prison-like room. It also forces the viewer to focus on the actors in the intimate scenes inside the bank because the setting recedes and becomes flat. By contrast, the overstimulating exterior scenes present a rush of the gathering crowd, police presence, and oral confusion. Lumet also refused to include music in the film. If the first obligation was to tell the audience that this event really happened, how could you justify weaving music in and out, he wrote. Even the song that plays over the opening montage of city scenes, Amarina by Elton John, sounds like a non-diegetic soundtrack until Lumet reveals its source in the getaway car and within the diegesis. Lumet's interest in the stranger-than-fiction reality of Dog Day Afternoon is only outperformed by his interest in his actors. Above all, there is Pacino, who is almost always on screen with his sweaty, bird-like coif and restless eyes. In a method performance, Pacino turns Sonny into more than a bank robber. He doesn't want to hurt anyone, he tells his captives, and it's not just a line. While Sonny and Sal could have been well on their way, Sonny expends time to allow the head teller, Penelope Allen, to use the bathroom. He won't lock the employees in the vault without air to breathe. He quickly forms an understanding with his hostages, some of whom seem to enjoy the experience and media attention. They watch themselves on TV, dance, laugh, and even practice spinning Sonny's rifle. To be sure, Sonny is more complex than a mere hero or anti-hero. He's also married to Angie, Susan Peretz, who didn't come down to the bank because she couldn't get a babysitter and nags him over the phone until he hangs up. But there are hints of Sonny's instability beyond the criminal act at the film center. Leon and Angie both recount to police his angry outbursts and crazed behavior. Regardless, Sonny has our sympathy. Psychologists might argue that both the audience and the hostages suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. That might be a stretch. If we don't learn to love Sonny, we learn to understand him, and Lumet gives that same consideration to every character on screen. His interest in the humanity of both crooks and cops, man and woman, straight and gay, remains constant. Everyone's just trying to get through this exhaustive day. After its release, Robin Wood noted that Dog Day Afternoon was the first American commercial movie in which the star/identification figure turns out to be gay. This fact was not lost on Lumet or his leading man. Pacino's screen career had just launched a few years earlier, and the stage actor's rise was meteoric. His appearances in Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather, 1972, Lumet's Serpico, 1973, and Coppola's The Godfather Part II, 1974, confirmed he was a formidable actor. Yet, he had reservations about playing Sonny in Dog Day Afternoon. He agreed to the role and then backed out several times, expressing concern about Sonny's state of mind and queer identity. Eventually, he signed for the part. Even so, after rehearsals, Pacino asked Lumet and Pearson to come to his home the day before the production was set to roll cameras. In a story from Maurice Spiegel's biography of Lumet, when they arrived, Pacino was acting like a dog, crawling around on all fours and barking. Worried that playing a queer man would tarnish his blooming career, Pacino pretended to go mad, hoping to be excused from the picture. However, Lumet saw through the dog routine and asked Pacino to put his anxieties into his performance. After all, Sonny must have similar feelings about robbing the bank. Pacino showed up for shooting as scheduled the next day. Lumet filled the other roles with off-Broadway actors and people who looked like they came from the streets of New York. Pacino pitched Lumet on casting John Cazale, the actor's on-screen sibling in The Godfather, as Sal, the lumbering powderkeg whose eerie exterior calm hints at something sensitive and broken underneath. The director worried about Cazale being nearly 20 years older than his real-life counterpart, but he agreed to cast him after a single meeting. Cazale's role would mark one of just 5 screen appearances for the actor, each in an iconic film. He died in 1978 from lung cancer caused by chain smoking, and because of this, there's a grim irony in his role as Sal, a character who refuses to smoke because he doesn't want the cancer. The most challenging part to cast was Leon, the first openly trans character in a Hollywood film. Lumet auditioned various members of the gay community, including several drag performers. But the director found his Leon with Chris Sarandon, whose approach to the character avoided showy flamboyance in favor of emotional realism. Assistant director Bert Harris recalled Sarandon's approach: "All I gotta do is be in love with this guy, want to marry him, and get a sex change operation. Simple." Further downplaying the potential for sensationalism or exploitation, Lumet's famous one-line direction to Sarandon was a little less Blanche DuBois, a little more Queen's housewife. Lumet's drive toward naturalism in Dog Day Afternoon meant he relied on the actors to improvise more than in any other film to his name. Although Frank Pearson would go on to earn an Oscar for his screenplay, Lumet and his actors workshopped scenes during rehearsals and created spontaneous moments. The director often recorded these improvisations and rewrote scenes according to the actors' ad-libbing. The key to their on-set improvisation was that each actor had thoroughly learned their character during the extensive rehearsals, allowing in-character instincts to take over. Among the most famous improvisations occurs when Sonny asks Sal which country he'd like to escape to in their plane. Sal replies, "Wyoming." Lumet had to cover his mouth to silence a laugh and not ruin the take. Also improvised was Sonny's line, "Attica. Attica." Arguably the film's most memorable scene, to whip up the crowd outside the bank. Sunny evokes the Attica prison massacre in 1971, in which authorities responded to a prolonged riot by gunning down prisoners, hostages, and guards, and afterward made white supremacist declarations. The assistant director whispered Attica to Pacino just before the cameras rolled, helping create one of the most iconic moments in all of 1970s cinema. The simple one-word reference captures Sunny's distrust of the police, who cruelly target people of color and the LGBTQ+ communities. While Sunny fuels the crowd's rage against the police, his audience fuels him. Dog Day Afternoon shows Sunny's need to be seen, and to an extent, a growing tendency to acquire power by becoming a star. Note the scene when the pizza delivery boy hands over the pizzas to Sunny, then turns and declares, "I'm a star." Years later, Pacino observed, that was the first time that kind of recognition vis-a-vis TV and the real world was shown. In a way, it was reality TV. Similarly, Sunny has no power in life but attains it through the robbery. He feels beleaguered and stressed, struggling to find work and pay for Leon's operation. He says to both of his wives, "I'm dying here." Although he never intended the robbery to become a hostage situation, Sunny quickly goes from feeling like a fuck-up and an outcast to being empowered by his ability to give orders to the police. "Put those guns down," he orders from outside the bank. Moretti reinforces the order, running at officers and shouting, "Holster those weapons." The crowd recognizes that Sunny, an otherwise powerless bisexual man in a world that does not accept him, has seized control. They cheer him on, "We're with you, Sunny." And Sunny amplifies himself to give the crowd a show. In one scene, he tosses cash at the crowd, prompting a scramble for the loose bills and friction between the police and onlookers. The real-life bank robber, Wadowitz, inspired Sunny's characteristic need for attention. Screenwriter Frank Pearson interviewed Wadowitz and described his behavior as, "I've got to keep your attention because the moment you look away, I don't exist anymore." Viewers can see Wadowitz's hunger for attention in Walter Stockman's 2005 documentary about the real-life robbery, based on a true story, in which Wadowitz inflates his importance over his celebrity. "Do you know how many thousands of people will come to the film just to see me?" The scenes of Sunny outside, facing down hundreds of spectators and cops, have electric energy. The audience feels that charge, even as they recognize the situation has become unhinged, sometimes comically so. But Lumet also observes smaller moments with equal attention. After Sunny speaks with Leon on the phone, Lumet holds a close-up of Panico, whose sweaty, frantic energy, twitchy blinking, and facial tics have been constant, exerting features until now. Then, for half a minute, Sunny sighs, wipes his brow, closes his eyes, lowers his head to cry, and then looks off, exasperated and trapped, his hair in mopish disarray. Lumet called it some of the best film acting I've ever seen. It's a moment that solidifies our identification with Sunny over, say, any of the cops who are often shown filling their faces with food or, in the FBI's case, rigid and emotionless. And while most of Lumet's direction could be called realistic and actor-focused, exceptions arise in his treatment of the film's two gunshots, first, when Sunny shoots out a window at the bank's rear entrance, and second when FBI agent Murphy, Lance Henriksen, shoots Sal in the head at the airport. Both gunshots are followed by quick montages of chaotic reactions, with millisecond cutting by editor Dee Allen. People scatter, bank employees scream, police raise their weapons, the crowd rushes away, and everyone takes cover. These montages contain the same kineticism in Pacino's performance, among the actor's very best and most dimensional. To be sure, Lumet's interest in naturalism resulted in flesh-and-blood characters and avoided many clichés that Hollywood often uses to represent queer characters on the screen. However, Pacino later demanded changes to the screenplay to limit the number of scenes in a queer context. These included removing a scene from the script involving Sunny and Leon's wedding, which was to feature Sunny in his military garb and Leon in a wedding dress. Instead, a photo of Leon in his wedding dress appears on television. Lumet also removed a goodbye kiss at the bank, replacing the scene with the heartbreaking farewell phone call between Sunny and Leon, during which the actors spoke on an actual phone call for the sake of authenticity. The original scenes, Lumet felt, would alienate the predominantly heterosexual audience of 1975. Despite the changes to accommodate viewers who were not prepared to see a same-sex wedding or kiss in a major motion picture, Lumet also sought approval from the LGBTQ+ community. He consulted with the Gay Activists Alliance, a group founded in New York just a few months after the Stonewall riots. The alliance gave its stamp of approval, and members of the gay liberation movement served as crowd extras outside the bank, chanting, "Out of the closet and into the street." Lumet's humanist treatment of Sonny and Leon underscores what scholar Frederick James described as a new visibility of something more fundamental in what might otherwise simply seem the background itself. The new agency and emphasis on countercultural figures extend beyond the queer community. Consider how certain bank employees gradually begin to understand and empathize with Sonny as a figure of rebellion against authority, giggling when other employees or their manager questions Sonny's use of language. Sonny's underdog role in the tragedy of Dog Day Afternoon makes his story sympathetic to the average viewer. A queer man becomes no longer a figure of scorn and ridicule, as is often the case in Hollywood films of this era, nor a stereotype, but someone worthy of compassion. The film never makes Sonny's sexuality an issue. It's not an issue for Sonny, who remarks, "It's just a freak show to them anyway. It don't matter." And it's not an issue for Lumet, who never overemphasizes the point or directs either Pacino or Sarandon to give a camp performance. Sarandon noted in an interview for a making-of documentary that the film wasn't about a drag queen and his boyfriend, but about trying to come to grips with what is wrong in their relationship. Although cops snicker and make cruel remarks amongst themselves, Sonny and Leon's evident affection for one another is treated with tenderness by Lumet and his actors. And when Sonny dictates his will, he avows that he loves Leon more than any man has loved another man in all eternity, and the viewer's heart cannot help but ache. Lumet may have matter-of-factly portrayed LGBTQ+ characters, but few critics, apart from Jameson and Wood, confronted that context upon the film's release in September 1975, beyond remarking about its inclusiveness. Only later would Dog Day Afternoon be recognized for its groundbreaking portrayal of LGBTQ+ characters in a straightforward manner. But those versed in Lumet and his career should not have been surprised. His lifelong liberal politics ranged from secretly working with blacklisted writers on his television productions in the 1950s to his financial support of the American Civil Liberties Union, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and Amnesty International. His interest was in human rights and justice, both legal and social. This is evidenced in his many pictures about police corruption and abuses of power, including themes of racism, as in 12 Angry Men and Q&A, 1988. Regardless of subject matter that may have been considered taboo in the 70s, Dog Day Afternoon became the year's fourth highest grosser after Jaws, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and Shampoo. It received 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Pacino, Best Supporting Actor for Sarandon, Best Editing, and Best Original Screenplay. Pearson won the film's only Oscar for his screenplay, despite the heavy improvisations and credited Life magazine source material. The film has since been considered a cherished classic. If Dog Day Afternoon's many terrific performances, immersive verite-style filmmaking, and unpredictable scenario preserve its place in the canon of great American films of the 1970s, its unembellished portrait of LGBTQ+ characters keeps the film in contemporary conversations about representation in cinema. Ever a humanist whose outspoken support of left-wing causes saturates his films, Lumet did not make the film as an agenda piece. Rather, he recognized the drama in this real-life story and saw its potential to reveal something about yourself and others. In this, Lumet exposed mainstream moviegoers to another world, and this pointedly queer subject played by Al Pacino remained center stage for most of the film, his psychology on urgent display from start to finish. Sonny's openness presents a sharp contrast to the stone-faced exterior of the FBI agents and the cheap manipulations by Detective Moretti. By not making Sonny's identity the film's subject, Lumet effectively normalizes it in a manner few other Hollywood films have ever achieved without some measure of didacticism. In a career of telling New York stories, Lumet's approach to Dog Day Afternoon remains his most earnest and lasting commentary on the messiness and sublime complexity of human beings. The title of the magnificent 1975 Warner Brothers release Dog Day Afternoon gives the game away, whatever else it's about, and there's a lot of things we could say it's specifically about. It's about how fucking hot it gets. August 22, 1972, the day the true crime story that screenwriter Frank Pearson turned into a screenplay, and which director Sidney Lumet and his cast then extensively revised through improvisation, though Pearson is the one who ended up with the film's solitary Oscar, was 81 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 degrees C, with a dew point of 59 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees C, which is to say it was actually a rather pleasant day by late August standards in New York City. But Dog Day Afternoon does not dick around with weather reports. It knows that the best version of its story comes from presenting a city torn against itself at 1,000 fissure points, baking in the merciless sun that beats down on the asphalt and doesn't let up even when it drops below the horizon. The characters are even sweatier and more ragged at night than they were during the day. It forms one of the smallest subgenres ever, with 1989's Do the Right Thing, movies in which the atmospheric oppression of summertime in New York City can magnify everybody's impatience and readiness to blow up at exactly those fissures between the people keeping society propped up and the dispossessed. Spike Lee's film called upon Public Enemy to chant "Fight the Power." Lumet finds Al Pacino nervously and angrily sputtering Attica, at retreating police to the delight of a crowd of bored onlookers, and it's all just another way of saying "fuck this bullshit." Or as Lumet's next film potently frames it, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." At its core, the story, massaged away from reality and with the main character undergoing a name change, is a good old-fashioned slice of Americana, the chestnut about criminals who make every possible mistake while regarding themselves as cool, smart operators. On that August day, Sonny Wurtzik, Pacino, Sal Natural, John Cazale, and Stevie, Gary Springer, planned to hold up a bank in Brooklyn, in and out in just minutes. The first problem is that the bank has no money. The criminals just barely miss the daily cash pickup. The second is that Sonny's impromptu backup plan involves setting the bank register on fire, and the smoke catches the attention of the cops, who quickly surround the bank. With little else to do, Sonny and Sal simply claim all the bank employees as their hostages, Stevie having jumped ship almost immediately, leaving the slightly baffled Sergeant Moretti, Charles Durning, to negotiate in the face of Sonny's increasingly colorful behavior and weird demands, all catching the attention of the media, who turn the fraught situation into a gaudy circus, dragging in Sonny's devastated mother, Judith Molina, his ex-wife Angie, Susan Peretz, and his new wife Leon, Chris Sarandon, a trans woman whose costly gender reassignment surgery, it turns out, was the motivating factor in Sonny looking to rob a bank in the first place. With that last detail, we plunge headlong into the film's defining trait, its interest in the lives and needs of the kind of people typically left of the mass cultural narrative, but it's become clear long before that plot thread shows up. It is, in fact, presented as something of a twist, though not in the least bit prurient about it, that Dog Day Afternoon either possesses its own streak of anti-establishment energy, or it finds those who do to be thoroughly fascinating, with no moral judgment supplied. The famous Attica scene doesn't come from the clear blue sky. That's not even the first reference in dialogue to the 1971 Attica State Prison riots, one of the great flashpoints for the early 70s left-wing intelligentsia. But even more than in its specifics, the whole film brims with characters who are fed up and know that things aren't going right for them. Sonny, in his many squawks of petulant outrage, shows off his knowledge of a full list of cultural touchstones, some more absurdly wielded than others, all of which reinforce the sense that he's as much a symptom of urban helplessness as a person in his own right. This is certainly why he so quickly becomes so fascinating to the news media that latch onto the crime like lampreys, and to the crowd of people outside. Dog Day Afternoon holds back from actually serving as a left-wing polemic. Its satire aims in all directions, against Sonny's enthusiastic dimness as well as in tandem with his outrage. And its anti-police sentiments were tempered considerably by casting Durning in the role of the police representative whom we see the most of. In contrast to the Spitfire Pacino and the wary, wired Cazale, Durning's calming tone of voice and relaxed features make him instantly likable, even if he is the film's main emblem of the man. The main thrust instead is twofold. First, the film provides a comprehensive snapshot of a segment of the underclasses of New York at a certain moment, more of an act of gonzo journalism than a message film about social ills. Many of the best films in Lumet's career, and this is very much one of the best among the handful of films I'd say jostle for the number 2 spot in his filmography, behind his exemplary theatrical debut, 12 Angry Men, are holistic descriptions of some broad aspect of that city filtered through one colorful individual, and Dog Day Afternoon is more overt about it than most. Before we meet any named character, we've been treated to a montage of the city's working class in all their aspects, set somewhat incongruously to Elton John's Amarina. The other thing it does is, simply, to present a remarkable collection of human beings behaving under stress. Pacino certainly dominates the film and its subsequent decades of appreciation, and he earns that. It's one of his best performances, from the moment he explodes the film's quiet, whispering opening scenes with his prattling, to the extraordinary scene where he recites his will, dripping with sweat and wearing a flat, distant look. But Durning and Cazale aren't far behind him in terms of how much depth they weave into their characters with just expressions and body language, in Cazale's case, frequently doing so when he's not even in focus within the frame. The miracle of it, and where Lumet's impossibly giving direction most clearly manifests itself, is in the full sense of we get of the characters who aren't even supposed to matter, the bank employees, who emerge one by one out of an amorphous mass of victims to be unique personalities, worrying about their loved ones, giggling and chatting as they try to stay cool while the night marches on. Insofar as the film is a tribute to messy, vital society, it's the way that it gives all of the hostages fully realized personalities, leaving us with the sense that any of them could just as easily be the focal point of this exact scenario as Sonny is, that most insists on that tribute. There are no side characters here, just a bunch of human beings all mixed up and trying to muscle through an awful situation. Awful because they're all beat down by the man in their own way, awful because of the hard, flat sun that cinematographer Victor J. Kemper allows to blow out the windows in so many shots, and the glossy sheen of perspiration they're all wearing by the end of the movie. For all its down with everybody rhetoric and its willingness to caustically mock the behavior that happens within it, Dog Day Afternoon is tremendously interested in its humans, and almost generous towards them, given a very curious definition of generosity to in 1972, two men, faced with mounting debt and an uncertain futures, attempted to rob a small bank in New York City, hoping to escape with just enough to make their lives better. When their plans slowly begin falling apart as the police surround the building, the two men become hostage-takers who must try to survive at all costs without betraying their ideals. Al Pacino stars as Sonny Wurtzik, the mastermind of the robbery who speaks with the police attempting to arrange his and his partner's safety while escaping with the money they have so far acquired. His partner Sal, John Cazale, is afraid of the ramifications of their actions and is constantly reminding his partner of all the limitations they placed on themselves when they agreed to commit this crime, including a desire to do no harm. Sonny works hard to keep his commitment, but the constantly elevating situation threatens to undermine his goals. His first contact with the police department is Detective Sergeant Eugene Moretti, Charles Durning, who tries his best within the confines of the situation to not only assure the safety of the hostages but also to keep Sonny and his collaborators safe in an effort to bring them in peaceably, avoiding a similar situation to the one that had occurred at Attica the year before. Their negotiations go relatively smoothly until an overzealous FBI agent, James Broderick, takes over the case and begins maneuvering behind Sonny, seemingly concerned more with bringing him down than saving those in the bank. Director Sidney Lumet seems to have a very hands-off approach when it comes to narrative structure and fancy camera movement. Although many of his contemporaries would have used oblique camera angles and quick, brazen edits to convey tension and balance, Lumet often plants his camera and allows the actors to convey the complexities of the narrative. And this style has helped bring out a number of wonderful performances from Lumet's films. Not only are Pacino, Cazale, and Durning impressive in this film, the actors in films as disparate as 12 Angry Men, Long Day's Journey into Night and Murder on the Orient Express propel their films to higher levels without so much as a fancy camera shot. That doesn't mean his choices of composition and pacing don't contribute well to the body, but his movies would be mere husks without the quality of performances he elicits. The film itself plays rather lethargically. Few filmmakers would evoke a sense of breadth in this way, forcing the audience to feel every excruciating minute as if they were trapped in this bank with Sonny. Yet, despite the pacing, the effect seems fitting. You could get a rough estimate of how difficult it is to be trapped within a bank fearing for your life from films that are more visceral and speedy, but to take the audience on such a journey takes a bit of bravery. This technique could easily have created one of the more bland silver screen offerings, but you never get bored thanks to Al Pacino. Pacino hasn't been one of my favorite actors. His performances in the last 2 decades have been so manic and excessive that I had begun to wonder if he has any ability for restraint. Here, he displays a measure of self-control that tempers his more wild and expressive moments. For every crowd-riling outburst there's a tender moment where he considers his actions as they impact his friends, his family, and his hostages. And when the film reveals that Sonny has been in love with a gay man, played by Oscar-nominated Chris Sarandon in a solid performance, and is carrying out this reckless scheme in order to afford his partner a sex change operation, the film takes on a whole new level of meaning. For a filmmaker of this prominence and an actor of this magnitude to take such a brave stance in a period of history where homosexuality was still reviled and degraded is rather amazing. That they do so without pandering to the audience is even more astounding. That audiences responded with a surprising $50 million theatrical run showed just how strong the film itself was. Less than 20 years after the film was released, culture and technology had changed, the government's tendency towards extreme actions and short-sighted decision-making continued. In Waco, Texas, the FBI made a rash decision to assault the compound, starting a fire that would end 76 lives. And now, more than 30 years after Dog Day Afternoon and 40 since the incident in Attica, our soldiers are once again involved in wars in foreign countries, the government has condoned the torture of purported terrorists, and Americans are allowed to let their prejudices and fears dictate their actions and permit the government to increase the control of their lives. The lessons that Lumet's film attempted to speak about have seemingly been forgotten. Perhaps it's time more people sat down to watch this 1975 classic and conjure up memories of that old adage one of my grade school history teachers taught me: if we forget the past, we are doomed to repeat it. Dog Day Afternoon is as important today as it was 36 years ago. Review written Sidney Lumet's Dog Day Afternoon is the true story of an attempted bank robbery in Brooklyn in 1972, by two men, Sonny and Sal. Things get bad, they take hostages, and then it gets worse. I have wanted to see Dog Day Afternoon for a very long time, and much in the spirit of the late reviewer, I have only just got around to watching it. I dislike the term left agog, but that's the best way to describe my mouth open eyes wide facial expression during this film, as my mind was blown multiple times, for both good and bad reasons, but I will get to that. Just a quick note, this article is my own opinion and is not representative of all LGBTQ+ people or their points of view. For those who haven't seen this film, the following contains spoilers. For those that have, we may not share the same sentiments about the film, and that's okay. I am always up for a bit of passionate film debate, but let's keep it respectful, folks. I saw Dog Day Afternoon, which will now be referred to as D-Day going forward, because, word count, people, on a Monday morning, and it was more than 2 hours of revelation, astonishment, joy and regret. How had I not seen this sooner? It was one hell of a roller coaster, and I'll explain these reactions in a bit, but first I wanted to make it clear why I loved this film so much. Scene after scene it punched holes in my resolve and managed to shatter some of my own ingrained beliefs about movies, beliefs that I have upheld for years. I'll admit, my beliefs may have been flawed to begin with, but hey, explore them with me and see what you think. I've had an aversion to films of the 70s after I was made to watch Apocalypse Now, All the President's Men, and A Clockwork Orange, assured they were classics for their time and films I would absolutely love because they were excellent. Don't get me wrong, I fully appreciate the artistry and respect them greatly, but I was definitely put off seeing more of the same, problematic, style over substance presentations that went nowhere. These were my thoughts, folks, and how blind I was. Enter the greatest robbery film I have ever seen. DDA does not waste a single scene. Everything has a purpose. There are no long shots to show how visionary the director is or how awesome the landscape is, nor were there lingering close-ups to promote the beauty or coolness of the protagonist. Every shot and scene of the film is used to push the story along, to show the characters developing during a traumatic event, and in short, it makes you feel invested, emotionally and physically with the characters and the situation. Crikey, it was tense. Right from Sonny, Al Pacino's clumsy gun reveal at the start, the bank staff ignore him as he frantically pulls at the ribbon which tangles the gun and the box he's carrying it in, it was clear to me that the finer details and subtleties mattered. In the beginning, Sonny handles some of the pressure well, his accomplice bailing seconds into the robbery, managing the bank staff who try to raise the alarm, reassuring an already unsteady Sal, and this, for the record, was the beginning of the buttock-clenching tension for me. However, as it gets sweatier, Sonny loses his grip. The rampant eye and body contact he has with the hostages, his painful silences during the difficult decisions he is having to make, even asking the bank staff what they would do, all tell us that Sonny isn't over his head, he is seeking approval, desperate for help, he is a guy doing what he feels he has to do, but doesn't know how. He's not exactly a hardened criminal and he genuinely doesn't want to hurt anyone, he got them rumbled by setting a fire in a little bin for goodness sake. His excitement of the public support, his giddy enthusiasm to stick two fingers up at the police, it all adds to the sense of chaos, the threat of losing control, for both Sonny and the cops. In parallel, Sal, oh my, just a beautiful performance by John Cazale, makes us do a dangerous dance between having utmost sympathy for him to being absolutely terrified of him, over and over again. I have never seen an actor use so little dialogue or emotion to convey the devastation of PTSD, whilst in a situation that makes him an unpinned grenade in an already volatile environment. Lumet smartly avoids using any incidental or background music, apart from a brief snippet of Looney Tunes and Uriah Heep on the TV and radio, and this really adds to the tension of never knowing what is going to happen or how we are meant to feel. Is Sal going to lose it and kill a hostage? Is a hostage going to turn robber and help Sonny escape? Should we be laughing at Sonny's incompetence and anxiety? Should we love him unconditionally for sticking up for the working class and sticking it to the man? Lumet fits so much into this film, and I was never bored. It definitely wasn't weird, and my word, the performances. Cue learning point number 2. Lumet absolutely bloody nailed it. The director gave quite a few scenes to improvisation, and it paid off, especially as they were the right scenes to experiment with. Fun fact, Lumet noted the improvisations during 3 weeks of rehearsal and wrote them into the screenplay, which went on to win an Academy Award. The natural, unscripted phone call between Leon and Sonny just gave me the feels. It's a heart-aching and raw revelation of the characters at their most vulnerable, and the reality of their relationship is made more powerful with the language of abuse, sadness, fear, love and regret equally. The improvisation between Sonny and Sergeant Moretti, Charles Durning, after Sonny fires a shot at the back door of the building, is just fantastic. As they reconvene at speed at the front of the bank, they are shouting over each other, they're confused, they're nervous, and they are both trying to keep their cool and maintain respective control in this explosive situation. The fact both actors went into it unscripted made it feel unnerving and unpredictable. It is a genuine how the hell do we handle this without anyone dying moment, and it is just gold. Of course, there's also the famous improv from Pacino as he riles up the crowd for support with his cries of Attica. Attica! A reference to the massacre at the Attica Correctional Facility, where prisoners were protesting for better living conditions and political rights. I think it's due in part to the improvisation that D-Day is far from boring, but more importantly, everyone and everything in it matters, and this movie feels as relevant today as it was 50 years ago. Sonny could hold up HSBC on the high street with the exact same motive and it would still stand as being realistic and current. Lumet does an amazing job of keeping the tension going, using very few sets and letting us think he has given us all we need to know, and then boom. It helps to have a couple of the best actors in cinematic history in the movie, and seeing Al Pacino and John Cazale together again gave me the warm and fuzzies. It promised that it was going to be a well-acted, character-driven film, and it was. When I say struggles with being gay, what I mean is I always found that mainstream and popular movies are just not confident in telling inclusive stories featuring gay characters or LGBT+ communities as part of a wider plot. I felt they couldn't write films integrating diversity as a norm, apart from Star Trek of course. I've consistently felt a pang of disappointment when Hollywood pats itself on the back for making a film about LGBTQ+ issues where sexual identity is the central reason for a plot being dramatic or comedic. I want to see characters I can identify with being part of a bigger story, and done so in a natural way. Sexual identity and Academy Awards go hand in hand, but I want more than All or Nothing, Brokeback Mountain, Carol, and Call Me By Your Name were breakthroughs, but I want to see how LGBTQ+ is represented when it isn't the only thing that drives a plot. To be crystal clear, these stories need to be told and these films need to be made, and new queer cinema is outstanding at this, but narratives where sexual orientation is a reason for things happening and stories happening to people who just happen to be queer are two very different types of film. My eyes were opened as Dog Day Afternoon builds the characters first, and then slots in the additional layer that Sonny happens to be gay. It is a simple and beautiful approach that blew me away and made me jump for joy. Here is a film, made in the 1970s, no less, that doesn't resort to a shock dum-dum doo-oom reveal of he's gay. And his wife is trans asterisk. That's why this is happening. Instead, it just allows the sexuality of the protagonist to be an additional angle rather than a pivotal twist. Sonny has held up a bank at gunpoint. The fallout and everything thereafter is from his actions, not from his sexual orientation or Leon's identity. The reason why he's doing it doesn't matter, and it's only when Sonny asks to speak to his wife and the cops need help in negotiating that it plays into the narrative. Other, lesser Hollywood films, especially, but not exclusively in the 70s and 80s, would have focused on this, sensationalized it, made it the big twist. Bearing in mind this film was made a few years after the Stonewall riots, the incredibly sensitive, realistic and bold approach it took to addressing gay and trans rights within a film that is not specifically about those issues is mind-blowing, and that's what challenged my belief. Chris Sarandon, in his only Oscar-nominated performance, is a marvel as Leon. Transgender representation in mainstream cinema has either been absent or problematic. Transgender women in particular have been portrayed as caricatures, from villains, Psycho, Dressed to Kill and Silence of the Lambs, to figures of comedy, Ace Ventura, and Revulsion, The Crying Game, and Ace Ventura Again. Reading up on Dog Day Afternoon, it appears a trans actor was turned down for the role, and that saddens and angers me. Well-known male actors have played trans women roles, Eddie Redmayne, Terrence Stamp, Jared Leto to name a few, and sidelined the actual representation of the trans community in films about the trans community. That's daft and infuriating, right? I could go on about this, but that's probably for another blog. For me, a trans actor would have been a better choice for the role, but Sarandon gave a bloody incredible portrayal as Leon. Leon's fragility and fear are wonderfully conveyed even before it becomes clear how he *** has been brought directly to the crime scene from hospital still feeling the effects of the drugs they put him on. To start things off, I'd like to apologize for the half-assed review of Rock'n'Rolla. Unless I posted this before that, in which case, I apologize in advance. Just don't read it. Actually, I'm going to throw it in the trash. This sort of honesty is rare in websites, that's why we're different. We respect you, dear reader. Review written Sidney Lumet's Dog Day Afternoon is the true story of an attempted bank robbery in Brooklyn in 1972, by two men, Sonny and Sal. Things get bad, they take hostages, and then it gets worse. I have wanted to see Dog Day Afternoon for a very long time, and much in the spirit of the late reviewer, I have only just got around to watching it. I dislike the term left agog, but that's the best way to describe my mouth open eyes wide facial expression during this film as my mind was blown multiple times, for both good and bad reasons, but I will get to that. Just a quick note, this article is my own opinion and is not representative of all LGBTQ+ people or their points of view. For those who haven't seen this film, the following contains spoilers. For those that have, we may not share the same sentiments about the film, and that's okay. I am always up for a bit of passionate film debate, but let's keep it respectful, folks. I saw Dog Day Afternoon, which will now be referred to as D-Day going forward, because, word count, people, on a Monday morning, and it was more than 2 hours of revelation, astonishment, joy and regret. How had I not seen this sooner? It was one hell of a roller coaster, and I'll explain these reactions in a bit, but first I wanted to make it clear why I loved this film so much. Scene after scene it punched holes in my resolve and managed to shatter some of my own ingrained beliefs about movies, beliefs that I have upheld for years. I'll admit, my beliefs may have been flawed to begin with, but hey, explore them with me and see what you think. That I've had an aversion to films of the 70s after I was made to watch Apocalypse Now, All the President's Men, and A Clockwork Orange, assured they were classics for their time and films I would absolutely love because they were excellent. Don't get me wrong, I fully appreciate the artistry and respect them greatly, but I was definitely put off seeing more of the same, problematic, style over substance presentations that went nowhere. These were my thoughts, folks, and how blind I was. Enter the greatest robbery film I have ever seen. DDA does not waste a single scene. Everything has a purpose. There are no long shots to show how visionary the director is or how awesome the landscape is, nor were there lingering close-ups to promote the beauty or coolness of the protagonist. Every shot and scene of the film is used to push the story along, to show the characters developing during a traumatic event, and in short, it makes you feel invested, emotionally and physically with the characters and the situation. Crikey, it was tense. Right from Sonny, Al Pacino's clumsy gun reveal at the start, the bank staff ignore him as he frantically pulls at the ribbon which tangles the gun and the box he's carrying it in. It was clear to me that the finer details and subtleties mattered. In the beginning, Sonny handles some of the pressure well, his accomplice bailing seconds into the robbery, managing the bank staff who try to raise the alarm, reassuring an already unsteady Sal, and this, for the record, was the beginning of the buttock-clenching tension for me. However, as it gets sweatier, Sonny loses his grip. The rampant eye and body contact he has with the hostages, his painful silences during the difficult decisions he is having to make, even asking the bank staff what they would do, all tell us that Sonny isn't over his head. He is seeking approval, desperate for help. He is a guy doing what he feels he has to do, but doesn't know how. He's not exactly a hardened criminal, and he genuinely doesn't want to hurt anyone. He got them rumbled by setting a fire in a little bin for goodness sake. His excitement of the public support, his giddy enthusiasm to stick two fingers up at the police, it all adds to the sense of chaos, the threat of losing control, for both Sonny and the cops. In parallel, Sal, oh my, just a beautiful performance by Cazale, makes us do a dangerous dance between having utmost sympathy for him to being absolutely terrified of him, over and over again. I have never seen an actor use so little dialogue or emotion to convey the devastation of PTSD, whilst in a situation that makes him an unpinned grenade in an already volatile environment. Lumet smartly avoids using any incidental or background music, apart from a brief snippet of Looney Tunes and Uriah Heep on the TV and radio, and this really adds to the tension of never knowing what is going to happen or how we are meant to feel. Is Sal going to lose it and kill a hostage? Is a hostage going to turn robber and help Sonny escape? Should we be laughing at Sonny's incompetence and anxiety? Should we love him unconditionally for sticking up for the working class and sticking it to the man? Lumet fits so much into this film, and I was never bored. It definitely wasn't weird, and my word, the performances. Cue learning point number 2. Lumet absolutely bloody nailed it. The director gave quite a few scenes to improvisation, and it paid off, especially as they were the right scenes to experiment with. Fun fact, Lumet noted the improvisations during 3 weeks of rehearsal and wrote them into the screenplay, which went on to win an Academy Award. The natural, unscripted phone call between Leon and Sonny just gave me the feels. As we find out more of his background, we realize that everyone he knows, from his family to his lover, drive him completely up the wall, and this robbery is the last futile act of a hopeless case. The film is carried by its actors, especially the remarkable Pacino, so by the time the stony-faced FBI show up on the scene we know enough to foresee how things will turn out. Strangely, Sonny and the pathetic Sal are the heroes here, and you feel sorry for them when it all goes horribly wrong, but the character business verges on being the film's downfall, slowing the story to a snail's pace. Did we really need the will dictation? Luckily, there are enough bitter laughs to make it absorbing in the main. Perhaps only in the 70s could a failed bank robber have been turned overnight into a counterculture folk hero. It's the subject of Sidney Lumet's thrilling, heist gone wrong movie, set on one sweltering day in New York when Sonny Wurtzik, Al Pacino, tried to rob a bank to fund the sex-change operation of his boyfriend Leon, Chris Sarandon. He ends up taking the cooperative bank staff hostage while a media and public firestorm takes place outside the bank, mixed in amongst an army of trigger-happy cops. And it's all based on a true story. Sonny is far from your hardened criminal. He doesn't want anyone to get hurt. He takes care of the hostages, who all become immensely fond of him and his less confident partner in crime Sal, Cazale. When the police and media turn up, Sonny is outraged at the trigger-happy police presence and quickly wins the support of the crowd with his honesty, bluntness, and quick wit. With the police incapable of controlling the situation, soon he is actively playing to the crowd, taking phone calls from the press in the bank. He becomes a counterculture icon, sticking it to the man. His famous chant of Attica refers to the famous prison riots, where prisoners rioted to secure their rights. It's the key topic that fascinates Sidney Lumet in this brilliantly frantic, edgy and dynamic film that captures the tension in New York, where it felt like the careful balance between law and order could disintegrate any time. Lumet's improvisational feel with the crowds, the edgy, raw performances, particularly from Pacino and Durning, both of whom are sensational, and the sense that anything could happen at any time. Dog Day Afternoon is about a city on the edge, combined with the ability of the media to turn regular people into stars. There was little faith in the authorities, and even a little bit of nose-thumbing in their direction could sway the crowds. At the center of all this is Sonny, a fascinatingly flawed person, partly absorbed with being the center of attention, part desperately trying to work out what his best move is among an increasingly narrowing number of options. Al Pacino nearly didn't take the role, after suffering a near-nervous collapse from the pressure of Godfather Part 2, but, after committing to the film, he gave one of his most extraordinary performances of an era he and a small group of actors dominated. Sonny feels increasingly trapped in his predicament. The robbery of the bank is hilariously cack-handed from the start. One of the robbers bails in minutes and has to be begged not to go home in the getaway car, and it becomes clear that for Sonny this is all a last desperate throw of the dice. Both of his relationships, with his first wife and his second marriage to Leon, are relationships on the brink of disaster, destabilized by Sonny's desperate need for proof of love and affection. He's a man uncertain in his own skin, smart enough to know the world isn't fair, but not smart enough to know what to do with it. Fundamentally decent, but forced into illegal actions. Pacino delivers this with the expected fireworks, but when we see Sonny away from the public gaze, he's a sad, broken down, isolated man who genuinely doesn't know where his life is going. Dog Day Afternoon was radical at the time for how it deals with homosexuality. Neither Sonny nor Leon are presented, as might have been expected at the time, as limp-wrist or fey, but just regular guys who happen to want different things from life. Chris Sarandon, Oscar-nominated, is strikingly tender, low-key and world-weary as a man resigned to what the world is throwing at him, from the emotional pressure of meeting Sonny's needs for affection, to spending every day feeling trapped in his body and facing suspicious stares from all around him. Pacino presents Sonny as a masculine, dynamic figure whose sexuality is just part of his personality. It's a film not afraid to acknowledge the love between men, and never considers this anything other than entirely normal, something extremely unlikely in 70s cinema. Indeed, you can see the mood of the time in the way the crowd changes once the motivations behind Sonny's actions becomes clear. Hostility grows, through many gay rights activists quickly arrive to bolster the crowd. The film's normalizing of homosexuality also serves as a critique for the assumptions and reduced options many identifying as gay had at the time. Of course, this all makes the entire siege even more attractive to the media. The film is a neat satire of the way the press can turn events like this into entertainment. A pizza delivery guy, sent to feed the hostages, can barely contain his excitement, screaming, "I'm a star." At least 2 hostages refuse offers to leave the siege, at least partly, it's suggested, because there is nowhere better to be than at the center of the show. Pacino's electric playing to the crowd demonstrates how Sonny's firecracker sense of the turmoil of the period, the violence of the authorities and the lack of justice for the regular guy, helps feed this. The media's eagerness to sensationalize the events, do turn them from real life into entertainment, and the way so many characters and onlookers yearn to be part of a real-life drama, is sharply critiqued, with truth and humanity sacrificed for primetime ratings, ideas Lumet would explore even more deeply in his next film Network. It's also fascinating to watch the cack-handed police inexperience at handling sieges like this, from the lack of central control to the trigger-happy cops, to allowing public and the media to get within a few meters of the bank entrance. Charles Durning is superb as a frazzled police sergeant, out of his depth, unable to control his colleagues and totally lacking the calm and control needed for hostage negotiations. He's replaced in the operation by FBI agent Sheldon, played with a chilling distance by James Broderick, who represents the other side of the law at the time, ruthless, cold, and very ready to switch from negotiation to execution. Sonny may look as in control of things, but it's quickly clear no one really is. Even Sonny feels this, Pacino delivering with a resigned calm a scene where Sonny asks one of the bank tellers to record his final will. Dog Day Afternoon is also a tragedy, with the real victim being Sal, Sonny's partner in the robbery. He's played with an almost childish innocence by John Cazale, as a not very bright man completely out of his depth, whose idea of a foreign country to escape to is Wyoming, a hilarious piece of improvisation by Cazale. While Sonny is the public face of the situation, and someone law officials figure they can work with, Sal becomes a dangerous unknown quantity for them that they feel needs to be disposed with. An offer they openly make to Sonny, who furiously rejects it, but, tellingly perhaps, doesn't tell Sal about. Poor Sal sweetly chats with the staff. He quietly warns about the dangers of smoking. He sweats and timidly waits to be told what to do. He bravely tells Sonny that he is completely ready to shoot the hostages, while clearly having no idea about the emotional reality of doing this. He meekly follows instructions and responds with panic to almost every situation. Cazale's flawless performance turns him into the real victim here, completely unprepared in every way for the situation he is in. He whiningly complains about being called gay on the news, and is terrified at the idea of flying with the hostages to a foreign country, having never been in a plane before. It's a wonderful personal tragedy that plays in the background of the film. Lumet's film has the dynamic vibe of a fly-on-the-wall documentary turned drama. Pacino is the perfect actor for this, his performance, Oscar-nominated, sensational, high-octane and demonstrative mixed with confused, vulnerable and eventually traumatized and guilt-ridden. The film brilliantly balances questions of politics, media and sexuality, offering searing critiques of attitudes around all three. Wrapped into a firecracker film, this is a brilliant piece of social commentary, personal tragedy and street theater. Overlooked more than it deserved, it's a masterpiece of 70s filmmaking. The times have changed. Today American television tries to exploit each and every saucy event from the headlines in order to produce a couple of uninspiring and formulaic TV movies or miniseries. But in the good old days, saying life is stranger than fiction had some value in screenwriters' minds. At least this is the impression you might get from a real-life event that inspired Dog Day Afternoon, the 1975 drama directed by Sidney Lumet, probably one of the most legendary films in the history of American cinema. The plot begins in August 1972 when a group of three men, led by Sonny Wertzik, played by Al Pacino, enters the First Savings Bank in Brooklyn in order to rob it. Sonny used to work in a bank and he is supposed to know all the tricks of the trade, making the whole operation routine. But things go bad from the start, when one of the robbers simply chickens out and runs, thus leaving Sonny with his silent and dim-witted partner Sal, played by Cazale, to finish the job. It turns out that the bank vault is mostly empty, but this is not the last unpleasant surprise for Sonny. Before he is able to get out, the bank is surrounded by hundreds of policemen led by Lieutenant Moretti, played by Charles Durning. Sonny decides to get out of this situation by taking the bank personnel as hostages and demanding a plane that would take him and Sal out of the country. But before the FBI arrives and takes over the negotiations, the situation gets out of control. The policemen around the bank are joined by thousands of onlookers and the media soon starts reporting some embarrassing details about Sonny's private life and the truly bizarre motive for his desperate act. Dog Day Afternoon has many trademarks of the 1970s, an era that is often referred to as the golden age of American cinema. First of all, the main role is played by Al Pacino in his prime, while the supporting role is played by Cazale, a character actor who appeared in a few movies but nevertheless managed to leave a lasting impression on future generations of film buffs. The film is directed by Sidney Lumet in his prime, and his style gives the impression of a time when filmmakers dared to employ techniques that would look unacceptably artsy to present-day Hollywood. The movie lacks a musical soundtrack, almost the entire plot takes place in a single location and the genre shifts from comedy at the beginning to serious drama at the end. Despite all of that, Dog Day Afternoon works and it could be enjoyed even by an audience unfamiliar with 1970s cinema. Sidney Lumet, same as in his 1957 masterpiece 12 Angry Men, shows how he could overcome the limitations of the plot with excellent casting and flawless direction. The real-life perpetrators of the robbery could hardly be anything other than pathetic losers, but Pacino and Cazale bring a lot of humanity to their portrayals and make the audience sympathize with them, despite the obvious lunacy of their actions. Lumet shows great talent for pacing that gives a real-time feeling to Dog Day Afternoon while making the film 6 times shorter than the real event. The audience is never bored, thanks to the good script by Frank Pearson that compensates for the lack of action with good dialogue. The legendary performances by Pacino and Cazale are well matched by those of Charles Durning and Chris Sarandon, but even the bit parts are good. Sully Boyer is more than fine as the duty-bound bank manager Mulvaney, same as the various actresses who are very convincing in displaying symptoms of Stockholm Syndrome. The most effective bit parts, however, belong to the actors playing FBI agents. Lance Henriksen is truly menacing in one of his earliest roles, and the exchange between Pacino's character and Sheldon, the FBI agent in charge played by James Broderick, is simply chilling. Perhaps the only major flaw of the film might be found in its date. Dog Day Afternoon, based on a true event, is a film that can best be understood only in the context of the times when it was produced. The early 1970s, although less stormy than the late 1960s, still represented an era of great social change in America, with anti-establishment behavior being fashionable among large segments of society. Even the most pathetic criminals were able to arouse popular sympathy with a couple of simple slogans, like Attica, Sonny's chant that brought back very fresh memories of the 1971 prison riot that had ended with the massacre of inmates. And for the homosexual community, which had recently won the right to formally exist, Sonny became a hero simply because of the motive for his totally insane and self-destructive action. In our politically correct times, when former outcasts and minorities have become part of the social mainstream, Dog Day Afternoon can't be as effective as it was almost 3 decades ago. But despite that, it is a very good film that could still be viewed and enjoyed by later generations. Sonny Wurtzek is somewhat the leader of the group, although it turns out his smash and grab plan was not exactly foolproof. Along with his friends Sal and Stevie, they attempt to rob the First Brooklyn Savings Bank. The plan immediately goes wrong when Stevie loses his nerve and leaves them. Then to make it even worse, they have arrived after the cash pickup, which leaves only $1,100 in the bank, accidentally drawing attention to the bank and police surrounding it. Sonny and Sal then take the employees as hostages. Police Detective Sergeant Eugene Moretti arrives on the scene and begins communication with Sonny, his personal life becoming key to trying to get him to talk with his estranged wife and 2 children, not really seeming like much to him. But when Leon turns up and claims that the robbery was to pay for gender realignment surgery, it emerged that this person was his lover. Everything just continues to get worse for the pair, with all possible issues occurring that they must deal with in the moment. An asthma attack for one employee, then another a diabetic, and this gives them the opportunity to release them to show that they actually had some compassion. Although they never planned for this to go on for 14 hours, with a plane and then transport organized, they probably thought that they would get away with it. A rather tragic ending though, and Sonny got 20 years in prison. Dog Day Afternoon was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Sidney Lumet, Best Actor, Al Pacino, Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Chris Sarandon, and Film Editing. It won for Best Original Screenplay. Al Pacino is truly an unstoppable force in this film and really has to be one of his finest performances. He lays it all on the line, is very impressive throughout the whole film. I think at times we can judge Pacino on the levels of going into just shouting, and that is not the case in this film. He is pushed to the limits with the emotional turmoil of a man who has got himself into a lot of trouble. John Cazale was brilliant in support as Sal, and this brings to a close of watching the 5 films he starred in. Such a shame his career was cut so tragically short. In this, he is an amazing presence. Chris Sarandon also deserves so much credit for his role as Leon, and he got an Oscar nomination to confirm his efforts, and I am sure this was his first film. Sidney Lumet brings such style and drama to his films with what seems like so little effort, managing to build up the tension and really draw a viewer into this world he has created. Always managing to bring out the best of the leading men in his films, and this one is no different with Pacino. True story of a man, Al Pacino, whose botched bank robbery turned into a media circus on a hot summer day in New York City circa 1972. Dog Day Afternoon is somewhat of a kindred spirit of Serpico. Both were based on true stories, both were directed by Sidney Lumet, both share a gritty realism that permeates every scene, both tell the story of a man pushed to extremes by his environment, and both feature knockout performances by Al Pacino. Dog Day Afternoon's only weak spot is the story, which, while interesting, doesn't provide quite enough meat to sustain a 2-hour movie. Still, what the story lacks, the script almost compensates for with some great dialogue and colorful characters. On August 22, 1972, John Wadowitz and Salvatore Natural attempted to rob a Brooklyn bank to raise money for Wadowitz's male wife to have a sex change operation. The ensuing hostage situation was watched live on TV by millions of New Yorkers. If you made it up, people wouldn't believe it, especially in the 70s, which is why this film, closely based on those events, strives so hard for naturalism. And it succeeds, and then some. There are multiple reasons it works so well, and I'm glad I for once got round to watching all the DVD extras because they reveal these factors very nicely. I'm going to use a liberal sprinkling of those facts as a way into my thoughts on the film, so if you've watched those features, some of this may seem too familiar. Sorry. Let's start where all films do, well, should the screenplay. Written by Frank Pearson, based on a magazine article about the true story, it was his screenplay that attracted both director Sidney Lumet and star Al Pacino to the project. It's immaculately structured, from the excitement of the opening, a confused, amateurish bank robbery through negotiations with police, emotional telephone conversations, and onto a nail-biting finale at JFK Airport. The pace is well considered. It doesn't rush through events, but it never flags, the tension is maintained, but important emotional scenes are never sped through. More on that in a moment. Importantly, the plot's numerous reveals are well managed too. For instance, Sonny's homosexuality and transgender partner are revealed quite far in, by which point we've already built a firm opinion of the characters. His was important for a 70s audience, as Lumet suggests in his commentary. In trying to get a handle on the real Sonny when he was starting on the screenplay, Pearson talked to various people who knew him, but struggled to reconcile their conflicting accounts of the same man. The link he found was that Sonny was always trying to please people, and that's what he used. In the film, he's not just out for himself or his boyfriend, but also trying to placate and please his hostages, the police, the media, his partner, his mom, his other wife. Pearson and Pacino do indeed make him a different man to all of them, and this is one of the reasons Sonny is such a great character and a great performance. He's genuinely three-dimensional. All of us behave differently, to some degree. When we're with different people we don't necessarily realize it, because they're all facets of the same us, but we do it so to put that into a character is to make him real. Pacino is propped up by a spotless supporting cast, all of whom get their moments to shine and use them to excel. Of particular note is John Cazale as Sal, the other robber. It's a largely quiet role, but he nonetheless conveys an awful lot with it. Lumet says that Cazale always seemed to have a great sadness in him, which you can always see come out in his performances, and he's certainly right here. We learn very few facts about Sal during the film, but we still know him, you suspect, as well as anyone does. Chris Sarandon is also superb, and Oscar-nominated, as Leon, the gay wife who wants a sex change. Lumet was keen to avoid presenting a stereotypical homosexual type, throughout the film trying to avoid turning any of these unusual characters into freaks, and Sarandon pitches it right. He plays the truth of a conflicted, confused character, a man who is perhaps easily led but hard to please, I think. As with the rest of the cast, the little touches he brings, such as starting a sure-to-be emotional phone call to a man currently in the middle of a tense hostage situation with "So how are you?" sell the reality of the piece. Capturing reality is clearly Lumet's prime concern. It's reiterated multiple times across all the special features, and I think he succeeds admirably. Some things we might not even notice. The film is lit with natural light outside, the bank's real fluorescent lights inside, and the nighttime sequences by a genuine police van reflecting off the white front of the bank, while other things, like the complete lack of a musical score, are more readily apparent. I say that, but that's not readily apparent, one may well notice, but it's such a perfect decision that it never rears its head. Lumet argues that having an orchestra chime in to underline an exciting or emotional moment would have broken the realism of what we're watching, and he was right. There's not a single scene here that could be improved by music, but several that would have been damaged by it. The way the film's shot supports this too. This is from the 70s, remember, before the craze for faux documentary and everything being handheld, so it still looks like a film, but it's not one that's been precision staged. Indeed, quite the opposite. Everything is kept loose. Sometimes actors block each other's shots, or talk over each other, or the handling of a prop goes wrong, and so on, but Lumet leaves it all in, even plays it up at times, and makes it work to his advantage. Rather than being the obvious "we're trying to make this look real" of today's grainy shaky cam stuff, this just feels real. The heart and truth of it come through, not the surface sheen of it being documentary footage. That's more important. There's great editing by Dede Allen too, though most of the time it goes unnoticed. In keeping with the aim of letting the audience forget this is a film, most of the cutting is simple and natural. Two examples leap to attention, however, and those are the only two times, guns are fired. Lumet and Allen recreate the confusion and violence of such an event with a smash of fast, sub-1 second cuts on both occasions. We see mindless fast cutting all the time now, but this incongruous example shows the effectiveness a fast montage can have when done by the right hands. The soundtrack also jumps with each cut, which is equally vital to the slightly disconcerting way it works. They're not just smoothing over this series of flashing images, we're being deliberately disorientated by them. Remember earlier I mentioned Pearson's pace? The editing plays a role in that too, naturally. After the film had been tightened for the final time, Lumet felt it had lost something, especially when it came to the will dictating scene, which now felt slow. So with Allen he went back and added 6 or 7 minutes of footage back in as with his staging, making it a bit looser, more naturalistic, and in the process fixing the pacing issue and making the important will scene feel right again. Without being able to see that cut, it's hard to say just how necessary it was, but as the final result feels so right, it seems his instinct was a good one. to try to circumvent built-in prejudices that would have adversely affected an audience's reaction too soon. It still works now. It's not a twist, per se, but it is likely to change one's perspective on the film and its characters mid-flow, which is always interesting. The dialogue is also spot on, but that's not all down to Pearson. While rehearsing, Lumet was so keen to capture a realistic tone that he allowed the actors to improvise the dialogue. This was working so well that he had it recorded, transcribed, and Pearson rewrote the dialogue based on the cast's improvisation. His scenes and their order remained intact, just the words were changed. This, coupled with additional improvisation techniques used on set, lends a believable tone to the characters' actions and words. They're not speaking dialogue, they're just speaking. In terms of performance, this is a real showcase for Pacino. As Sonny, the movie's version of John, the whole film rests on his shoulders, and he's more than capable of bearing the weight. Some roles allow an actor to subtly be good throughout the film, others allow a few grandstanding set pieces where they can act, but Dog Day Afternoon gives Pacino both. The latter are, naturally, easier to recall, the way he works the crowd, Attica, the pair of draining phone calls to his wives, but most of all, the will-writing scene. As the climax looms, Lumet allows the time for Sonny to dictate his will in full to one of the bank girls. Pacino is brilliant, understated, but, in a combination of performance and writing, though, in this case, the text is taken from the real-life will, revealing, cementing some of the conflicting forces that have pulled on Sonny throughout the film. This film. Directed by Sidney Lumet. Screenplay by Frank Pearson. Story by Thomas More. Based on The Boys in the Bank. Produced by Martin Bregman. Starring Al Pacino. Cinematography Victor J. Kemper. Edited by Dee Allen. Production company Artists Entertainment Complex. Distributed by Warner Brothers. Release date September 20th, 1975. Running time 125 minutes. Country United States. Language English. Budget $3.5 to $3.8 million. Box office $50 to $56 million.